The day my mother called me selfish was the day I stopped being her daughter. I was 17, standing in our kitchen with my college acceptance letter still warm in my hands, when she delivered the verdict that would shape the next decade of my life. My name is Felicity, and that summer changed everything. I had just been accepted into Harvard Business School's early admission program, my dream school, my ticket out. But apparently, that didn't matter as much as babysitting my bratty 15-year-old cousin Tessa during our annual family vacation to the Maldives. "What do you mean you can't watch Tessa?" Mom's voice carried that familiar edge of disappointment. "She needs supervision while Barry attends his business meetings." "Mom, I have 3 scholarship essays due next week. I can't spend my days chasing after Tessa while she shops and takes selfies." "Felicity." She set down her coffee mug with deliberate slowness. "Family comes first. Always." "My future comes first," I countered, gripping the acceptance letter tighter. "Harvard isn't just going to wait around while I—" "Oh, enough about Harvard." She threw her hands up. "You're being selfish. Tessa needs you. Barry needs you. The family needs you." "I'm not being selfish. I'm being practical. Tessa's old enough to— If you won't help with Tessa, then don't bother coming on the trip at all." The kitchen fell silent. Even the humming refrigerator seemed to hold its breath. "You don't mean that," I whispered. "I do." Her eyes were steel. "Either you help with Tessa or you stay home." I lifted my chin. "Fine, I'll stay home." "Excuse me?" "I said I'll stay home. I'll work on my essays, apply for more scholarships, and prepare for my future. You can all go have fun in the Maldives without me." Mom's laugh was sharp and hollow. "Oh, sweetie, this isn't just about this summer. If you choose your precious essays over family now, don't expect to be included in any family trips going forward." "That's ridiculous," I said, but my voice shook. "You can't just—" "I can, and I will. Actions have consequences, Felicity. It's time you learned that." She was right about one thing. Actions did have consequences. That summer, while they posted pictures from their beachfront villa, I worked 2 jobs and finished my scholarship applications. When they went skiing in Aspen that winter, I was interviewing for internships. Year after year, their vacation photos appeared on social media without me in them. My sister Sophie would sometimes call, her voice quiet and apologetic. "Mom's being stubborn," she'd say. "Give her time." But time only hardened the divide. I threw myself into my studies, then my career. Every exclusion, every missed family moment became fuel for my ambition. I worked harder, climbed higher, until success wasn't just a goal, it was my revenge. Now, 16 years later, I sat in my office overlooking the crystal clear waters of my own luxury resort, staring at a reservation that had just landed on my desk. The name jumped out at me like a slap: Powell Wise Family Reunion, Party of 7. My mother, my sister, Uncle Barry, Tessa, and the others had no idea they'd just booked their summer vacation at my resort. They didn't know I owned this slice of paradise, or that I'd built it from the ground up. They probably thought I was still that selfish teenager who chose ambition over family. Walker, my business partner, leaned against my desk. "You could just cancel their reservation." "No," I smiled, running my finger over the confirmation letter. "I want them to see exactly what their selfish little girl accomplished." "Felicity," he gave me that look, the one that said I was playing with fire. "Don't worry," I said, standing to face the window. "I'm not going to make a scene. I'm just going to give them the best vacation of their lives and watch their faces when they realize who's been hosting them." My phone buzzed. Another booking notification. I glanced at it and froze. The dates finally registered in my mind. They'd booked their stay over July 15th, my mother's 60th birthday. I laughed, the sound echoing off the glass walls of my office. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. "Should I be concerned about that laugh?" Walker asked. "Not at all," I replied, already planning the welcome champagne, The suite upgrades, the special birthday arrangements. I'm just going to give my mother exactly what she deserves, the birthday surprise of a lifetime. The Powell Wise party arrives in exactly 1 week, Walker announced, dropping a stack of files on my desk. Are you absolutely sure about this? I was inspecting the newly renovated beachfront villa, the one I specifically assigned to my family. The ocean breeze carried the scent of plumeria through the open windows as I adjusted a throw pillow for the 100th time. Stop asking me that, I said, moving to straighten a painting. I've been sure about this for 16 years. It's just... Walker hesitated, following me onto the villa's private deck. This isn't just any week. It's your mother's birthday celebration. I'm aware. And you don't think that might make things more explosive? I turned to face him. What's your point? My point is that revenge served cold is one thing. Revenge served on your mother's 60th birthday might be nuclear. A staff member appeared at the door, clipboard in hand. Ms. Felicity, the special order champagne has arrived. Where would you like it stored? In the main cellar, please. And make sure the 82 Bordeaux is ready for the birthday dinner. After the staff member left, Walker raised an eyebrow. Expensive wine? That doesn't sound very vengeful. The best revenge is success, Walker. I want them to see exactly what I've built while they were busy excluding me from their perfect little family vacations. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Hey sis, wish you could join us next week. Missing you. I ignored it, just like I'd ignored the last dozen similar messages. Sophie meant well, but she'd never stood up to Mom, never challenged the status quo. Her quiet support meant nothing when she still participated in my exclusion. Speaking of family, Walker said, watching me pocket my phone, your sister's been trying to reach you. I know. You could tell her you'll be here. And ruin the surprise? Where's the fun in that? I walked back inside, checking the amenities list. Besides, she's part of this too. She could have refused to go on these trips without me, but she didn't. Walker picked up a framed photo from the side table, one I'd specifically placed there. It showed my family in the Maldives, the vacation I'd missed because I wouldn't babysit Tessa. They were all smiling, sun-kissed and happy, not a care in the world about the daughter they left behind. You know what this reminds me of? Walker set down the photo. Remember that investor who tried to steal your initial business plan? The one you could have destroyed but chose to work with instead? That was different. Was it? Because you told me then that success was the best revenge too. But you didn't just show him your success. You turned him into an ally. Made more money that way. I stopped my inspection rounds. Are you suggesting I try to reconcile with them? I'm suggesting that maybe there's more than one way to win this game. Before I could respond, my tablet chimed with an alert. I pulled up the message and felt my breath catch. They've added a note to their reservation. They want to book the private dining room for a special birthday dinner. Guest count 15. 15? Walker frowned. I thought it was 7. They've invited extended family. I scrolled through the updated guest list, recognizing names I hadn't heard in years. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone except me, apparently. Felicity? No. I held up a hand. Don't. This just proves I'm right. They're still excluding me, still pretending I don't exist. Well, they're about to find out just how wrong they've been about me all these years. I strode to the villa's bar and grabbed a bottle of water, trying to calm my racing heart. Make sure everything is perfect for their arrival. I want them to be completely relaxed, totally at ease. Then, when they're settling in for their first dinner, you'll make your grand entrance? Something like that. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. After all, what kind of host would I be if I didn't personally welcome such important guests? Walker sighed, picking up his files. Just remember, you built this place to be a paradise. Don't turn it into a battlefield. As he left, I walked out onto the deck again, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink. In just 7 days, my family would be standing here, admiring the same view. They'd be amazed by the luxury, impressed by the service, completely unaware that their black sheep daughter was the architect of their perfect vacation. Until I chose to reveal myself. I pulled out my phone and finally replied to Sophie's text. Don't worry about me. I have a feeling this will be a birthday Mom never forgets. I watched their arrival from my office's hidden observation deck, heart pounding as the resort's luxury shuttle pulled up to the entrance. Mom stepped out first, still elegant at 60, her designer sunglasses perched perfectly on her nose. Sophie followed, then Uncle Barry helping Tessa with her mountain of luggage. They're here, Walker announced unnecessarily through my earpiece. I can see that. I adjusted my resort manager's blazer. How's the welcome champagne? Chilled and ready. Are you sure you want to do the initial greeting yourself? Absolutely. I took a deep breath. Time to make an entrance. I rode the private elevator down to the lobby, timing my arrival just as they finished checking in. The marble floors echoed with my heels as I approached the front desk, where my mother was already questioning the staff about dinner reservations. Welcome to Paradise Cove, I said, my voice carrying across the lobby. I trust your journey was comfortable? Mom turned, the polite smile freezing on her face as recognition hit her. She stumbled back slightly, catching herself on the counter. Felicity? Mrs. Powell, I replied smoothly, extending my hand. As resort manager, I personally welcome all our VIP guests. The lobby fell silent. Sophie's mouth hung open. Tessa clutched her phone mid-selfie, and Uncle Barry's luggage slipped from his grip, thudding onto the marble floor. Resort? Manager? Mom's voice wavered. Among other things, I gestured to the waiting staff. Please, allow us to escort you to your villa. We've prepared welcome refreshments. Mom's shock quickly morphed into something else, that familiar calculating look I'd grown up with. You work here? Not exactly. I led them toward the beachfront path, enjoying every click of my heels against the wooden boardwalk. I own this place. The sound of someone choking behind me was probably Uncle Barry. Inside the villa, champagne was already being poured as the family scattered around the living room, still processing my presence. Sophie kept shooting me uncertain smiles, while Tessa hadn't looked up from her phone, probably already posting about this dramatic turn of events. This is unexpected, Mom finally said, gripping her champagne flute too tightly. Is it? I perched on the arm of a chair. 16 years is a long time to wonder what happened to your daughter. We didn't wonder, she replied sharply. You chose to distance yourself. Did I? I smiled, all teeth. I seem to remember being told I wasn't welcome on family vacations unless I agreed to be Tessa's personal babysitter. That's not, Mom started, but Uncle Barry cut her off. Wait, what? That's why Felicity stopped coming on trips? It's ancient history, Mom waved her hand dismissively. What matters is that Felicity has apparently done, well, for herself. Her tone suggested she was still deciding if that was a good thing. Very well, I confirmed, standing. Paradise Cove is one of the top-rated luxury resorts in the Pacific. We're booked solid year-round, and our waiting list is months long. Then why accept our reservation? Sophie finally spoke up. Because family comes first. I echoed Mom's old words back to her. Always. The silence that followed was delicious. Well, I continued, moving toward the door, I'll let you all get settled. Your dinner reservation is at 7 in our main restaurant. I've taken the liberty of arranging something special. Felicity, wait, Sophie called out, but I was already closing the door behind me. Walker was waiting outside. That went well. That was just the appetizer. I started walking back to my office. Wait until they see what I have planned for dinner. I saw your mother's face. He fell into step beside me. She looked shocked, impressed, horrified, scared, he said quietly, like she's waiting for the other shoe to drop. Good. I stopped at the elevator. She should be. Felicity, Don't start, Walker. This is just beginning. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. By the way, did you confirm the photographer for Mom's birthday dinner? Yes, but perfect. I stepped into the elevator. Make sure they get plenty of shots of everyone's faces when I give my toast. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of my family's villa in the distance. Through the windows, I could see them all huddled together, probably discussing what just happened. Mom was gesturing animatedly, Sophie looked worried, and Tessa was finally looking up from her phone, staring in my direction with an unreadable expression. Let them talk. Let them worry. They had no idea what I had planned for the next few days. After all, revenge, like fine wine, only gets better with age. I was reviewing the evening's dinner arrangements when someone knocked on my office door. Sophie stood there, looking exactly like she did when we were kids, and she'd sneak into my room after one of Mom's lectures. Can we talk? She asked. I'm rather busy. I gestured at the papers on my desk. Please? She stepped inside anyway. This is the first time I've seen you in person in, 5 years? 4 years? 8 months? Your wedding. I set down my pen. You know, the one where Mom seated me at the back with the college friends you haven't spoken to since freshman year. Sophie winced. I didn't know about the seating arrangement until... Save it. I stood up, walking to the window. What do you want, Sophie? I want to understand. This place, it's incredible. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered? Would you have stopped going on the family trips if you knew? Before she could answer, another voice cut in. Excuse me, is this a bad time? A man stood in my doorway, tall, tanned, with the kind of smile that probably got him out of speeding tickets. I recognized him from the guest registry. Connor, staying in the oceanfront suite for a week. Mr. Garrett. I straightened. How can I help you? Please, call me Connor. He glanced between Sophie and me. I was hoping to discuss extending my stay, but I can come back. No need. I turned to Sophie. We're done here. We're not, Sophie insisted. And you know it. Connor cleared his throat. I actually have a dinner reservation in 20 minutes. Perhaps I could come back tomorrow? Something about his diplomatic tone made me pause. Join us for dinner instead. I was just about to head down to inspect the service anyway. Sophie's eyes widened. Felicity? Perfect, Connor smiled. Though I hope I'm not interrupting a family reunion. Actually, I said, you're providing a welcome buffer for one. The restaurant was already filling up when we arrived. I spotted my mother at our family's reserved table, watching us with narrowed eyes as we approached with Connor. Mom, I said sweetly, I hope you don't mind if we join you. Mr. Garrett here is one of our most valued guests. Of course not, she replied with equally false sweetness. We always have room for friends. Tessa looked up from her phone for the first time since arriving. Wait, aren't you that guy from the fitness app commercials? Connor laughed, guilty as charged. Though I prefer to think of myself as a tech entrepreneur who occasionally gets roped into marketing. Fascinating, Mom cut in. Felicity, dear, I was just telling everyone about how surprised we are to find you here. Who would have thought our little rebel would end up in hospitality? I signaled the waiter for wine. Life is full of surprises, isn't it? Like finding out your daughter owns one of the most exclusive resorts in the Pacific, rather than just working here. Uncle Barry choked on his water. Owns? Tessa's eyes went wide. Like, for real? For real, I confirmed, as the sommelier appeared with a bottle of ridiculously expensive Bordeaux. I built this place from the ground up. Every detail, every design choice, every luxury amenity, all me. With investors, surely, Mom interjected. Actually, Connor spoke up, Paradise Cove is famous for being independently owned. It was a major talking point when I was researching vacation spots. He turned to me. I had no idea I was dining with the founder herself. Mom's smile tightened. How lovely that our Felicity has made such interesting connections. Speaking of connections, I said, Tessa, how's college? Still studying fashion design? How did you know that? Tessa blinked. I make it my business to know everything about my guests. I sipped my wine, including the fact that Mom's birthday dinner this weekend will have 15 people, not 7. The table fell silent. You should join us, Sophie blurted out, for Mom's birthday dinner. You're here anyway, and I'll be there, I interrupted. I'm hosting it after all. Mom set down her fork with a clang. You're what? Hosting. I've arranged everything. The menu, the wine pairings, the entertainment. Consider it 16 years of missed birthday presents rolled into one. How thoughtful. Mom's voice could have frozen the tropical air around us. Connor cleared his throat. The food here is exceptional. I particularly recommend the sea bass. As conversation reluctantly turned to safer topics, I caught Sophie watching me with a mixture of concern and curiosity. She'd seen something in my expression, something that worried her. Good, because the birthday dinner wasn't just going to be a celebration, it was going to be a reckoning. And I had the perfect toast prepared. The private dining room buzzed with conversation as 15 members of my extended family settled in for Mom's birthday dinner. I stood at the entrance, watching them fawn over the elaborate decorations, the custom menu cards, the crystal champagne flutes, all carefully chosen to showcase exactly what their outcast daughter had achieved. Quite the turnout. Connor appeared beside me, adjusting his tie. Thanks for the last-minute invitation. Thanks for accepting. I needed a friendly face in the crowd. Ready to watch the show? Is that what this is? Before I could respond, Mom clinked her glass, commanding attention like she always did. Before we begin, I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate my 60th birthday. And... She paused, looking directly at me. Thank you, Felicity, for this unexpected hospitality. Oh, I'm just getting started, I smiled, moving to the head of the table. Would anyone like to see some photos of the resort's development? I had them specially prepared for tonight. Walker, right on cue, dimmed the lights as a screen descended from the ceiling. The first image appeared, a younger me, standing on an undeveloped beach, blueprints in hand. This was day 1, I said, when it was just empty beach and a dream, and a trust fund I'd been saving since I was 17. Mom's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. The next slide showed construction beginning. I lived in a trailer on site for 2 years, overseeing every detail. This was during the summer of 2015. I believe you were all in Bali that year. Aunt Margaret shifted uncomfortably. Uncle Barry suddenly became very interested in his napkin. And here, another slide, is opening day. We were fully booked within hours of announcing our launch. The same day, actually, that the family was posting photos from that ski trip in Aspen. Felicity, Sophie warned quietly. But my favorite photo, I continued, as the next image appeared, is this one. The screen showed a familiar scene, my family on a beach, all smiles and sunburns. The vacation I'd missed because I wouldn't babysit Tessa. Where did you get that? Mom's voice shook slightly. It was on social media. Public post. I've kept every photo from every vacation I wasn't invited to. 16 years worth. Tessa put down her phone. Is that why I found all those old vacation albums in my suite? You did what? Mom snapped. I thought our guests might enjoy some light reading. I signaled the servers to begin serving dinner. I had copies made, one for each room. That's enough! Mom stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't know what game you're playing. Game? I laughed. This isn't a game, Mom. This is karma. This is what happens when you cast out your daughter for daring to have ambitions beyond babysitting. I never cast you out. I chose to prioritize my future over being Tessa's unpaid nanny, and you punished me for it, for 16 years. The room fell silent except for the gentle clink of servers placing plates. Is that true? Tessa looked at her father. Is that why Felicity stopped coming on trips? Uncle Barry wouldn't meet her eyes. It was complicated. It wasn't complicated at all, I said. Mom gave me an ultimatum. Babysit or be excluded. I chose exclusion. And look where it got me. Where it got you, Mom's voice was ice, is bitter and alone in your big, empty resort, orchestrating elaborate revenge plots instead of simply talking to your family. Talking? I stepped closer to her. Like when I tried to talk to you after graduation, or when I tried to explain why I couldn't watch Tessa, or maybe like when I sent you my business plan and you returned it unopened. I returned it because you were being stubborn. I was being ambitious. Ladies, Connor stood up, his voice calm but firm. Perhaps we should stay out of this. Mom and I snapped simultaneously. No, he said, surprising us both. Look around. This is supposed to be a celebration, but you're both so focused on winning that you can't see what you're losing. I followed his gesture to see Sophie crying silently, Tessa staring at her lap, Uncle Barry looking years older than he had at check-in. Felicity, Walker appeared at my elbow. There's an urgent call from the mainland about tomorrow's shipment. There wasn't. It was our predetermined escape signal if things got too heated. I took it. Enjoy your dinner, I said, straightening my jacket. The resort's signature chocolate souffle will be served for dessert. It's made with the same recipe I was working on the summer I wasn't invited to the Maldives. As I walked out, I heard Mom's quiet voice. What have we done? But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Because if I stopped now, I'd have to admit that revenge didn't taste nearly as sweet as I'd imagined. I was in my office, staring at weather reports warning of an approaching storm, when someone knocked. Not Walker's usual quick rap or Sophie's hesitant tap. This was determined, steady. Come in, Tessa. My cousin stepped inside, looking different from the phone-obsessed girl who'd arrived days ago. She carried one of the photo albums I'd planted in their rooms. How'd you know it was me? Security cameras. I pointed to the monitor on my desk. Plus, you're the only one brave enough to face me after last night's dinner. About that, she sat down without being invited. I've been looking through these albums. All the vacations, all the photos. 16 years of them. Quite the collection, isn't it? It's messed up, she said bluntly. What they did to you. What I did to you. I hadn't expected that. You were 15. Yeah, and I was a spoiled brat who threw tantrums until I got my way. She opened the album to a specific page. Look at this one. Me sulking because Dad wouldn't buy me a jet ski. And here's you, in the only photo I could find from that summer, studying at your desk while we were all in the Maldives. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Storm's coming, I said, trying to change the subject. Stop deflecting. Tessa leaned forward. You built all this to show them they were wrong about you, right? To prove something? I built it because I'm good at what I do. Bull. She stood up, pacing. You built it because every time they excluded you, every time they chose me over you, it made you more determined to succeed. I get it now. A knock at the door interrupted us. Walker entered, looking concerned. The storm's picking up speed, he said. We need to start moving guests inland. Already? I checked the radar. The mass of red and orange had grown significantly. It wasn't supposed to hit until tomorrow. Weather Service just upgraded it. We need to start evacuations now. My phone buzzed. A text from Connor. Entire families gathering in the main lobby. Thought you should know. Great, I muttered. Just what I need. Go, Tessa said. Be the boss. Show them exactly who you've become. The lobby was chaos when I arrived. Guests milled around nervously as my staff efficiently directed them towards safer areas. My family huddled near the check-in desk, Mom trying to take charge as usual. We need to leave immediately, she was telling Sophie. Get our things and... Nobody's leaving, I announced, striding up. The roads are already flooding. Everyone's moving to the inland building until the storm passes. You can't keep us here, Mom started. Actually, I can, and I will. This is a mandatory evacuation order for all beachfront buildings. I turned to address the crowd. Everyone, please remain calm. Our inland facility is built to withstand Category 5 hurricanes. You'll all be safe and comfortable there. She's right. Connor appeared, tablet in hand. I checked the building specs. It's one of the most secure structures in the Pacific. Mom opened her mouth to argue, but Uncle Barry cut her off. Leah, let her do her job. Her job? Mom scoffed. This is just another power play. A massive thunderclap shook the windows, making several people scream. The lights flickered. Mom, I said firmly, for once in your life, please just listen to me. Something in my voice must have reached her because she fell silent. Walker, I called out, start the evacuation protocol. VIP guests to the 3rd floor, standard rooms on 1 and 2. Full storm procedures in effect. As my staff efficiently began moving people, Tessa appeared at my elbow. What can I do to help? I looked at her in surprise. You want to help? I owe you 16 years of support. Might as well start now. For the next hour, we worked together, directing guests, distributing emergency supplies, setting up comfort stations. Tessa proved surprisingly capable, anticipating needs before they arose. Even Mom eventually stopped trying to take control and started helping distribute blankets. By midnight, everyone was safely installed in the inland building. The storm raged outside, but inside, an unexpected calm had settled over the evacuees. Families played board games in the lounges, kids built blanket forts, and my staff served hot chocolate and cookies. I found Tessa in one of the quiet corners, still clutching that photo album. You know what I realized? She said as I sat down. In all these photos, everyone's smiling, but they're not really happy. They're just pretending everything's perfect. That's what our family does best. Not anymore. She pulled out her phone, opened the camera, and scooted closer to me. Time for a new album. One with real smiles. As the flash went off, capturing our first photo together in 16 years, I heard Mom's voice behind us. Room for one more? The storm outside grew stronger, but somehow the thunder didn't seem quite so threatening anymore. The storm trapped us in the inland building for 2 days. By hour 36, with wind still howling outside, we'd run out of small talk and forced politeness. That's when the real storm hit. Inside. I still don't understand, Mom said, pacing our makeshift command center in the building's conference room. Why didn't you just tell us about the resort? Would you have believed me? I looked up from the weather reports. Or would you have assumed I was lying to get attention? That's not fair, isn't it? I turned to face her. When I told you about my business plan, you said I was being unrealistic. When I got my first investor, you told relatives I was playing entrepreneur. I was trying to protect you. From what? Success? Sophie, who'd been quietly helping sort emergency supplies, spoke up. From failing. Right, Mom? That's what this was always about. Mom sank into a chair. I didn't want you to get hurt. So you heard her first, Tessa said from the doorway. She'd been helping distribute snacks to guests. Real solid logic there, Aunt Leah. Tessa, Uncle Barry warned. No, she's right. Mom's voice cracked. I was terrified. The room fell silent except for the storm's rage outside. Terrified of what? I asked. Of you. She met my eyes. You were so bright, so determined, just like your father before he left us for his big dreams and never came back. I couldn't watch you make the same mistakes. So you made them for me? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Mom, Sophie interrupted, did you ever think that maybe Dad left because you tried to clip his wings too? I didn't, Mom started, but Connor chose that moment to burst in. Sorry to interrupt, he said, but we've got water seeping into the ground floor east wing. I switched immediately to crisis mode. Walker, get maintenance down there. Sophie, we need more towels. Tessa, already on it. Tessa grabbed emergency supplies. I'll start moving people up to higher floors. I'll help. Mom stood up. No. I held up my hand. You and I need to finish this conversation. Everyone else, go. As they filed out, Mom and I faced each other across the conference table. Outside, lightning flashed. You want to know why I didn't tell you about the resort? I said, because I needed to prove something to myself, not you. Every time you excluded me, every time you chose perfect family photos over your actual family, I built something stronger inside myself. I never meant to. Yes, you did. You meant to control me, to force me into your perfect family mold. But here's what you didn't expect. It worked, just not the way you planned. What do you mean? Every rejection made me more determined. Every missed vacation gave me more time to work on my dreams. You tried to clip my wings, but instead you taught me to fly through storms. Mom's eyes filled with tears. I was wrong. What? I was wrong, she repeated louder. About everything. About you. About what you could become. She gestured around us. Look at what you've built. Look at how you're handling this crisis. You're not just successful, you're extraordinary. I gripped the back of a chair, steadying myself. Don't try to make this better with a few nice words. I'm not. She stepped closer. I'm trying to admit that my biggest failure wasn't in raising a rebellious daughter. It was in not seeing that my daughter's rebellion was actually her strength. Another crack of thunder, closer this time. We should check on the guests, I said, turning away. Felicity, wait. Mom grabbed my arm. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm so proud of you. Even if you never believe another word I say, please believe that. Before I could respond, Tessa burst back in. Guys, everyone's gathering in the main hall. They're scared about the storm, and they're looking for the owner to say something reassuring. I wiped my eyes quickly. Right. Yes, of course. As I headed for the door, Mom called out, Show them who you are, sweetheart. Show them what I was too blind to see. I paused in the doorway, looking back at her. Want to come watch? She smiled through her tears. I've missed enough of your moments. I'm not missing this one. Together, we walked toward the main hall, where my family, both old and new, waited to see how I'd weather this storm. And for the first time in 16 years, I felt ready to face it with them by my side. The morning after the storm broke, I stood on the resort's main deck, surveying the damage. Palm trees were scattered like pickup sticks, and the beach had transformed into a new landscape, but the buildings stood strong, just like me. Impressive construction, Connor said, joining me at the railing. Both the buildings and the bridges you've built these past few days. That was terrible, I laughed. Do you practice those lines? Only the good ones, he smiled. Your mother's looking for you, by the way. Something about breakfast? I checked my watch. Right? The birthday breakfast we'd rescheduled after the storm disrupted our dinner plans. Want to join us? Actually, I should head out. My flight's in a few hours. Already? The storm extended my stay longer than planned. He hesitated, though I wouldn't mind coming back, if the owner approves. Before I could respond, Walker appeared with a tablet. Damage reports ready. Also, your family's gathered in the private dining room. Thanks. I turned back to Connor. The owner definitely approves. In the dining room, I found a scene I never expected. Mom arranging flowers, while Tessa helped Sophie set up a breakfast buffet. Uncle Barry was attempting to fix a twisted banner that read, Happy Birthday. Need help? I asked. We've got it, Tessa said. Though fair warning, I made the coffee and I have no idea what I'm doing. I brought backup. Walker appeared with the resort's barista and a professional coffee service. Always prepared, Mom smiled. Just like you. As we settled around the table, the morning sun streaming through windows that had weathered yesterday's storm, Sophie raised her glass. A toast? Actually, I said, I have something to say first. I pulled out an envelope. Mom, this was supposed to be part of my big revenge reveal at your birthday dinner, but, well, plans change. She opened the envelope slowly, pulling out a deed. What is this? A vacation villa, here at the resort. It's yours. Felicity, I can't. You can. And before you protest, it's not just for you, it's for all of us. I looked around the table. No more exclusive family vacations. No more choosing who's worthy of being included. This place is big enough for all our differences. Even mine, Tessa grinned, because I was thinking of doing my fashion internship somewhere tropical next summer. Don't push it, I laughed, but we both knew I meant yes. Speaking of pushing things, Sophie said, sliding a folder across the table, I have something for you too. Inside was a business proposal. Resort-based wedding planning services? I've been thinking, she said. My event planning business in the city is doing well, but maybe it's time for an expansion. If you're interested in a partnership? Partners, I tested the word. I like it. Me too, Mom said quietly. Though I hope there's room for one more partner. I may be retired, but I do have 30 years of hospitality experience. I met her eyes across the table. We'll start small, maybe consulting on the holiday programs. She nodded, understanding the olive branch for what it was. Well, Uncle Barry stood up, since we're all sharing news, Tessa, should you tell them? Or should I? Tessa bounced in her seat. We're moving. Dad's opening a new office here on the island. Really? Mom looked surprised. Really? He confirmed. After seeing what Felicity built here, well, let's just say it inspired some changes. Walker cleared his throat from the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but the contractors are here to assess the storm damage. Go, Mom waved me off. We'll handle cleanup here. You sure? Positive. She stood up, straightening her shirt. Though I might stop by later to see how the repairs are going. If that's okay? More than okay. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Mom? Happy birthday. Thank you, sweetheart. She smiled. Though I think you're the one who got the best gift. Your family back. No, I corrected her. We all got something better. A fresh start. As I walked through my storm-battered but standing resort, I heard laughter from the dining room behind me. Not the forced, photo-perfect laughter from those old vacation albums, but real, messy, imperfect joy. The kind that weather any storm. The kind worth waiting 16 years for. The kind that feels like home. I pulled out my phone and texted Connor. About that return visit, how does next month sound? His reply came instantly. Perfect. I hear the owner runs a pretty good resort. I smiled, looking back at my family through the dining room windows. She's learning, I typed back. She's finally learning.
Hey there, I'm Serafina Vaughn. You know, I thought loyalty, hard work, and sacrifice meant something, especially when it came to family. I built an empire. I saved our family business from bankruptcy. And just when I thought I had secured my place, my father looked me in the eye and said, "It's your sister's now." No recognition, no gratitude. Just betrayal, wrapped in a $50 bill, tossed onto the table like a tip for a waitress. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part? They had been planning my downfall for years. They stole my work, erased my name, and when I fought back, they tried to destroy me completely. The Vaughn family dining room was the picture of elegance: pristine white linens, polished silverware, and a chandelier casting its golden glow over the mahogany table. The scent of seared steak and red wine filled the air, a contrast to the growing tension settling in my chest. I had been here 1,000 times before, in this very seat, listening to my father speak with the authority of a man who had built an empire from the ground up. But tonight felt different. Margaret, my mother, sat in silence, her eyes darting toward me every few moments before quickly turning away. Celeste, my younger sister, exuded the same effortless confidence she always did, her silk dress draped perfectly, her manicured fingers circling the rim of her wineglass. And then there was my father, Dominic Vaughn, the man I had idolized for most of my life, the man I had nearly destroyed myself trying to impress. As the conversation flowed around business updates and upcoming mergers, I waited. This was it, the moment he would finally acknowledge me, the moment he would recognize what I had done. I had saved Vaughn Enterprises. When our logistics division was on the verge of collapse, when our outdated systems were hemorrhaging money, I had built the software that turned everything around. I had spent years working tirelessly, rewriting algorithms, optimizing data flows, burning through sleepless nights to craft the very system that catapulted us back to the top. And tonight, I would finally hear the words I had been waiting for. Dominic set his knife down, his movements deliberate. "Serafina," he said, his voice even, controlled. "I want to thank you for all the work you've done for the company. Truly, you've been invaluable in restructuring our tech operations." A swell of pride rose in my chest. "But leadership," he continued, "is about more than technical brilliance. It's about presence, vision, the ability to command a room and inspire people. And that's why, moving forward, Celeste will be taking over as CEO of Vaughn Enterprises." The words hit like a punch to the gut. I blinked, certain I had misheard him. Celeste? I glanced at my sister, expecting to see the same surprise reflected in her expression, but all I saw was a slow, knowing smile as she took another sip of wine. My voice was steady, but my hands clenched beneath the table. "Excuse me?" My father sighed, as if he were explaining something simple to a child. "You'll still have an important role in the company, of course, but—" "No!" My voice cut through the air, sharper than I intended. "No, I built the system that saved us. Without it, without me, this company wouldn't even be standing right now." He chuckled. Actually chuckled. Celeste set her glass down, finally deigning to speak. "Serafina, don't be dramatic. You're great at what you do, but running a company is different. Some of us are just born for leadership." I felt the heat rise to my face. I turned back to my father. "Tell me this is a joke." Dominic exhaled, shaking his head. Then, as if it were the most casual thing in the world, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and tossed something onto the table. A crumpled $50 bill. "For your effort," he said simply. I stared at the money, my entire world tilting. Years of sacrifice. Years of pouring my soul into this company, into his legacy. The late nights, the missed holidays, the exhaustion. The belief that if I just worked hard enough, he would finally see me. $50. Celeste let out a soft chuckle. "Oh, come on, Sarah. You're overreacting." I turned to my mother, searching her face for any sign of protest. Any sign that she would speak up for me. But she didn't. She just lowered her gaze to her plate. Something inside me broke. Slowly, I picked up the bill, turning it over between my fingers. Then, with careful precision, I folded it into my napkin, placed it beside my untouched plate, and stood. Dominic sighed again. "Serafina, don't be—" "I'm not being dramatic," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I'm excusing myself." Celeste smirked, her amusement barely contained. Margaret opened her mouth as if to say something, but no words came. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I simply walked out, my heels clicking against the marble floor, leaving behind everything I had spent my entire life trying to earn. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I walked into Vaughn Enterprises, ready to reclaim my place, but my name was already gone. The lobby hummed with the usual morning chaos. Assistants rushed by with coffee trays, executives murmured over last-minute reports, and the front desk phone rang in a steady rhythm. But something was off. I could feel it before I even reached the elevator. Eyes flickered toward me, then quickly away. Conversations hushed as I passed, replaced by the artificial click of heels against polished floors. I squared my shoulders. It didn't matter. Last night had been a mistake, a misunderstanding. My father had always been ruthless in business, but even he had to see reason. The doors to the executive floor slid open with a soft chime, and I stepped out, expecting the familiar sight of my office at the end of the hallway. Instead, I was met with a name I didn't recognize. The glass panel that once read Serafina Vaughn Chief Technology Officer had been replaced. My title, my identity, erased overnight. A cold weight settled in my stomach as I pushed open the door. The room was almost unrecognizable. My desk was gone. My computer, my files, every trace of my presence, vanished. The space had been rearranged, sleek and minimalistic, with a designer handbag perched on the polished wood. And sitting behind that desk, flipping idly through a stack of documents, was Celeste. She looked up with an easy smile, her posture relaxed, her fingers drumming against the armrest. "Good morning, Serafina. Didn't Dad tell you? This is my office now." I didn't move, didn't speak. My brain struggled to process the words. Celeste let out a soft laugh. "Oh, don't look so surprised. You knew this was coming, didn't you?" My voice came out quiet, but firm. "What's my position now?" She tilted her head, pretending to consider. That's a good question. Maybe something in IT support? You were always good with computers." Rage burned in my chest, hot and suffocating. I clenched my fists at my sides. "I built the system that saved this company. Without me, you'd have nothing." Celeste leaned forward, her smirk widening. "Yes, but you see, we own the rights to that system now, and we don't need you anymore." The air thickened. The walls of the office felt smaller, closing in. I barely heard the footsteps approaching behind me until a hesitant voice broke the silence. "Miss Vaughn?" I turned. A security guard, someone I vaguely recognized from the lower floors, stood there, shifting uncomfortably. He avoided my eyes as he spoke again. "I was told to escort you out." The final blow. I glanced at Celeste one last time, but she was already reaching for her phone, attention elsewhere, as if I was nothing more than an interruption in her morning routine. Everything I had built, gone. Everyone I had trusted, silent. I took a slow breath and turned toward the exit. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a scene, no pleading, no arguing. I walked out with my head high, past the rows of employees who wouldn't even meet my gaze. Past the walls that once held my late-night work sessions, my triumphs, my sacrifices. The cold morning air hit my skin as I stepped outside, my breath fogging in the chill. I looked up at the towering building, the empire my father had built, the empire I had saved, and I made a promise to myself. If they didn't want me in their empire, I would build my own, and I would burn theirs to the ground. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. The betrayal wasn't sudden. It had been planned for years. The weight of realization pressed against my chest as I sat in my apartment, surrounded by the remnants of my shattered career. Legal documents lay sprawled across the coffee table, their dense paragraphs blurring together under the dim glow of a single lamp. Empty coffee cups and unopened takeout containers lined the counter. Evidence of days spent locked in my own head, replaying everything over and over. The moment my father tossed that $50 bill onto the table. The way Celeste smirked as she took my office. The hushed whispers in the hallway when I walked through Vaughn Enterprises for the last time. But it wasn't until now, sitting in the wreckage, that I understood the full extent of their betrayal. They hadn't just pushed me out. They had erased me. I sifted through the stack of legal documents my lawyer had sent over that morning, scanning the words again, though I already knew what they said. Vaughn Enterprises had filed for full ownership of my software months before I was removed. The contracts were airtight. Somehow they had transferred everything into their control without me noticing. A sick feeling curled in my stomach as I flipped through the paperwork. My name wasn't on the patents anymore. Celeste's was. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to breathe. This wasn't an overnight decision. It wasn't some impulsive power grab. They had been planning this. A memory surfaced, hazy but clear enough to make my hands tremble. It was 2 years ago. I was in my father's office, exhausted from working another 60-hour week, reviewing system updates with him when he slid a stack of papers toward me. "Just standard agreements," he had said, his tone almost dismissive. We're making a few structural changes, but nothing that affects you directly. Sign where I've marked. And I had. Without reading them. My stomach twisted with self-loathing. They had stolen my work in broad daylight, and I had handed it to them. Anger surged, hot and consuming. I grabbed my phone, fingers numb, as I dialed my father's number. He picked up on the third ring. Serafina. His voice was unreadable, smooth as ever. You stole my software. My voice shook, but not with fear. With rage. He sighed, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. Business is business. You were careless. I gritted my teeth. You took my life's work and gave it to Celeste. Don't you feel even a little ashamed? He chuckled, the sound cold and cutting. Serafina, it's done. Move on. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. Then I ended the call. My heart pounded as I turned back to the papers, my father's words ringing in my ears. Move on! That was his final dismissal, his last effortless rejection. I grabbed the nearest stack of contracts and threw them against the wall. Pages scattered across the floor, my breath coming in sharp bursts. I had been blind. I had trusted them. Never again. A strange calm settled over me as I straightened. The fury was still there, burning steady beneath my skin, but it wasn't chaotic anymore. It was focused. They thought they'd taken everything. They forgot. I'm the one who built it in the first place. I knew there was no turning back. If I wanted revenge, I had to build something bigger, stronger, untouchable. The weight of that decision settled over me as I sat in a quiet cafe, my fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Across from me, my mother stirred her tea absently, her gaze avoiding mine. I had asked her to meet me here for one reason, to hear the truth. You knew, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. You knew what they were doing to me. Margaret Vaughn exhaled, setting her spoon down with a soft clink. Your father. He always had a different vision, Serafina. He never saw you as the one to lead Vaughn Enterprises. I let out a hollow laugh, shaking my head. I saved that company, and he gave it to Celeste like I was nothing. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I wanted to stop it, she whispered, eyes filled with something dangerously close to regret. But Dominic, once he makes up his mind, there's no changing it. A lifetime of knowing this woman, of seeing her stand by a man who crushed anything he couldn't control, and still, a part of me had hoped she would choose me. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. If you're not with me, then don't expect to be part of what comes next. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. And in that silence, I knew. I was truly alone in this fight. I stood, dropping a few bills on the table, before walking out into the cold Chicago air. Alone, but not broken. That night, I started reaching out. To the people who mattered. The ones Vaughn Enterprises had discarded, just like they had discarded me. Matthias Reed, our former CFO, who had kept the company afloat in its worst years before being pushed out when Celeste brought in one of her useless networking friends. Vera Holt, a data analyst who had built the company's predictive models from the ground up, only to be let go when she questioned Celeste's reckless spending. Cassian Ford, the lead engineer who had helped me design my software, the only other person who truly understood its intricacies. We met in the back room of a small cafe, far from Vaughn Enterprises and its long-reaching influence. The air was thick with unspoken frustration, with old wounds that had never healed. Matthias leaned forward, his expression sharp. We know what Celeste is doing to the company. The question is, what's your next move? I met each of their gazes. We build something better. We build something they can't touch. Cassian smirked, nodding. They own your old code, but they don't own your mind. For the first time in weeks, a flicker of something close to hope ignited in my chest. We spent the next several hours sketching out the foundation of what would become Nova Systems. A new generation of logistics software. Faster, smarter, completely independent of Vaughn Enterprises' outdated model. But the biggest challenge wasn't the technology. It was the funding. Matthias leaned back, rubbing his chin. We need investors, and I know just the people Celeste pissed off. I exhaled, staring down at the scribbled plans in front of me. This was my second chance. They had taken everything from me, but in return, they had given me a reason to fight. That night, I stood outside Vaughn Enterprises one last time. The towering building loomed over me, the name glowing against the night sky. But for the first time, I felt nothing. I whispered to myself, I don't need your empire. I'll build my own. Celeste thought she had won. She had no idea. She just started a war. It didn't take long for Vaughn Enterprises to start crumbling under Celeste's reign. And I was just getting started. The first signs were subtle. A few whispered conversations among former clients, vague reports about internal restructuring. But then Matthias slid a folder across the table toward me, and I saw the truth in black and white. Vaughn Enterprises is hemorrhaging clients, he said, his tone even, though I could see the satisfaction behind his eyes. They lost 3 major contracts this quarter alone. I flipped through the pages, my pulse steady. The numbers didn't lie. Vaughn Enterprises' projected revenue had taken a steep dive, and the biggest blow? One of their longest-standing clients had just signed with Nova Systems. I exhaled slowly, tapping my fingers against the table. It's starting. Inside Vaughn Enterprises, chaos had already begun to spread. Senior executives, people who had been with the company for years, were handing in their resignations. Celeste, of course, refused to see the problem. This is just a temporary setback, she told the board, dismissing concerns with a wave of her hand. We're restructuring, they'll come crawling back. But not everyone was as blind. Nathan Wolfe, one of my father's longest-serving legal advisors, finally broke his silence. Dominic, your daughter is running this company into the ground. I could almost picture the look on my father's face when those words hit him, but he still defended her. She'll figure it out, he said. She just needs time. Time wasn't something Celeste had, and I made sure of that. It was at a high-profile tech event when our paths finally crossed again. I wasn't there for the spectacle, but for the strategy, to make sure the right people knew that Nova Systems was the future. Celeste, on the other hand, walked in like she still ruled the world, draped in designer confidence. When she spotted me, her lips curled into a smirk. Still playing in the minor leagues, sister? She taunted, swirling the champagne in her glass. I met her gaze without flinching. I don't need to. Your empire is crumbling. Her smirk faltered for just a second, but Celeste never backed down easily. You should start preparing for failure, I said, voice cold and certain. It's coming faster than you think. She let out a laugh, shaking her head. We'll see who wins, little sister. Then she turned, walking away as if she had nothing to worry about. She thought she was invincible. She had no idea she was already standing on a sinking ship. Celeste's desperation would only grow. And desperate people make reckless decisions. I knew she wouldn't sit back and watch as Nova Systems thrived while Vaughn Enterprises crumbled. She had spent her life believing she was entitled to success, convinced that her name alone guaranteed her victory. But the world was starting to see what I had always known. Celeste was nothing without people like me cleaning up her mess. And now, there was no one left to save her. I woke up to a notification flood on my phone. News alerts, emails, frantic messages from Matthias. Something was wrong. When I saw the headline, I felt the anger settle deep in my chest. Nova Systems under investigation. CEO accused of fraud. The article was worse than I expected. It claimed Nova Systems had built its foundation on stolen intellectual property from Vaughn Enterprises. Anonymous sources suggested my entire company was operating on technology that wasn't mine. That I wasn't the visionary behind it, but a thief. A calculated hit. I knew exactly who was behind it. My hands tightened around my phone as I read through the article, breaking down each lie for what it was. Celeste was playing dirty. but she had underestimated me. Later that day, Vaughn Enterprises called a last-minute press conference. The media swarmed their headquarters, eager to get the latest on what was being called one of the most shocking corporate betrayals in recent years. And Celeste, standing in front of the cameras, relished every second of it. "Nova Systems," she said, her voice smooth and rehearsed, "is built on ideas that do not belong to Serafina Vaughn. My sister's company is profiting from proprietary software that she had no right to take." I stood at the back of the crowded room, unseen, but I heard every word. "We are calling for an official investigation," she continued, glancing at the reporters like she had already won. "We will ensure that justice is served." She was playing the perfect role, the wronged CEO, the victim of a supposed betrayal. The media ate it up. I could have stayed quiet. I could have let the press cycle run its course, but I never let Celeste have the last word. I stepped forward, and the moment I did, the room shifted. Reporters turned, murmurs spread. Celeste's carefully maintained expression faltered. I met her gaze as I walked toward the stage, my heels clicking against the marble floor. She recovered quickly, plastering on a fake smile. "Well, look who decided to join us." I took my time picking up the microphone, making sure the room was silent before I spoke. "You think you can erase me?" My voice was steady, sharp. "I'm still here." For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in her eyes. That was all I needed. That night, I met with my PR team. The battle had officially begun. "We fight back," Matthias said. "We expose them." He pulled up a list of every move Celeste had made since taking over Vaughn Enterprises. The reckless spending, the poor leadership, the backroom deals that were already starting to turn on her. "She wants a war?" I exhaled, already formulating our response. "Then let's give her one." Within 24 hours, Nova Systems released a counterstatement. We didn't just deny the accusations. We proved them false. We exposed Vaughn Enterprises' plummeting revenue, the contracts they lost due to mismanagement. Then we launched a social media campaign, highlighting Celeste's failures. The response was immediate. Articles started to shift from attacking me to questioning her. Investors, already wary of Vaughn Enterprises' decline, pulled further away. Celeste had taken the first shot. Now, it was my turn to fire back. The betrayal that came next wasn't from my sister. It was from someone I once trusted. I arrived at Nova Systems that morning, expecting a routine meeting. Instead, I walked into a war zone. Matthias was waiting for me outside the conference room, his expression tense. He barely let me set my bag down before speaking. "We have a leak." His words were sharp, cutting through the morning like a blade. I stilled. "What do you mean?" He handed me a printed document, our new product designs. The same ones we had locked behind security measures, protected by encrypted networks, shared only with my most trusted employees. And yet, this is in Vaughn Enterprises' hands. For the first time in weeks, my heart truly stopped. I snatched the papers, flipping through them as if I could undo what had already happened. This was confidential information. No one outside of my inner circle should have had access to this. I looked up. "Who?" Matthias exhaled, jaw tightening. "We checked security footage. It's Jason." Jason Carter. My fingers curled around the documents as the realization settled into my bones. Jason had been one of the first people to stand by me when I left Vaughn Enterprises. He had been there when Nova Systems was nothing more than an idea, offering support, promising loyalty. I had trusted him, and now he had given everything to Celeste. A memory surfaced. Jason and I sitting in a cramped cafe, months ago, when I first approached him about joining Nova Systems. He had laughed, shaking his head. "You've got guts, Serafina. Taking on Vaughn Enterprises head-on?" "I don't have a choice," I had replied. I had thought he understood. I had thought he was on my side. But I was wrong. Now, I stared at the security footage playing on Matthias's screen. Jason slipping a flash drive into his pocket before leaving the office late at night. The truth hit like ice in my veins. He wasn't my friend, I murmured. He was always Celeste's spy. I didn't wait. I found Jason. He was arrogant enough to still be in Chicago, meeting with investors, acting as if he hadn't just sold me out. I walked straight into his office, shutting the door behind me before he even had the chance to react. He barely looked guilty. If anything, he looked amused. "You've been busy," I said, voice dangerously calm. Jason smirked, leaning back in his chair. "I had a better offer." I held his gaze. "Why?" He shrugged. "You think you're untouchable? Celeste made me an offer I couldn't refuse." I stared at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel betrayed. I just felt cold. Jason thought he had played me. But I wasn't finished yet. I left without another word, my mind already calculating the next move. Back at Nova Systems, I gathered Matthias and the team. "We fight back," I said, voice steady. "And we win." Celeste thought she had stolen something valuable. She thought she had gutted my company from the inside. So I let her believe it. We planted false data. We let Jason take back fake product blueprints, flawed, unstable technology designed to fail in real-world application. Celeste took the bait instantly. Within days, Vaughn Enterprises announced their newest breakthrough, technology they had supposedly developed in secret. In reality, it was my trap. They rushed the product into production, eager to beat Nova Systems to market. And it failed. Spectacularly. Investors pulled out. The media turned on Celeste. Vaughn Enterprises took another massive hit. And I watched from a distance, smiling. "Betrayal cuts deep," I murmured, "but I make sure it cuts both ways." Celeste thought she had outmaneuvered me. Instead, she walked straight into my trap. But when people are desperate, they don't back down. They double down. And Celeste was about to make her most reckless move yet. Vaughn Enterprises was unraveling. The company my father had built, the empire I had saved, was now days away from total collapse. Investors were pulling out. The stock price had plunged so low that financial analysts had already started calling it a lost cause. Clients were abandoning ship, refusing to renew contracts. The damage was too severe, too deep. Nathan Wolfe, the company's lead legal counsel, had been loyal to my father for years, but even he could see the writing on the wall. "We're out of options," he told Celeste during an emergency board meeting. "There's nothing left to salvage." But Celeste didn't believe in reality. She refused to see the cracks forming beneath her feet. "This isn't over," she snapped, slamming a stack of documents onto the table. "We just need to be more aggressive. We need a new strategy." Nathan leaned back, unimpressed. "Celeste, this is over. The company is broke. No amount of spin is going to fix that." She glared at him, as if sheer willpower could change the truth. But it couldn't. I had made sure of that. So when Celeste walked into my office at Nova Systems later that evening, I wasn't surprised. But I was amused. She was a shadow of the woman who had once stolen my company, my title, my future. The smug arrogance was gone. Her designer dress was still impeccable, but there was an unmistakable tension in her face. For the first time, Celeste looked tired. She dropped into the chair across from my desk and exhaled slowly. "You have to stop this, Serafina." I leaned back, watching her carefully. She wasn't here to fight. She was here to beg. I tilted my head. "Stop what?" She let out a humorless laugh. "You know what? You've won. Vaughn Enterprises is finished. Just let it go." I didn't move, didn't blink. "No, Celeste," I said quietly. "You lost." She flinched. For years I had imagined this moment. I had dreamed of watching her break. And yet, as I sat across from her, I felt nothing. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I was just trying to survive," she muttered. "You don't understand what it's like to be in my position. To have—" I held up a hand. "Don't." Her mouth snapped shut. "You made your choice, Celeste," I said, my voice calm. "Now live with it." She stared at me, her lips pressing into a tight line. Then, without another word, she stood and walked out. And I thought that was the end. I was wrong. An hour later, my attorney burst into my office. "Vaughn Enterprises just filed a lawsuit against you," she said, breathless. "It's from Dominic." My pulse remained steady. For what? "He's trying to block Nova Systems from acquiring any of Vaughn's remaining assets. He's claiming that you signed contracts years ago that still bind you to Vaughn Enterprises." I exhaled slowly. Dominic Vaughn. Even at the very end, he still clung to his delusion of control. I knew exactly what contracts he was referring to, the same ones he had tricked me into signing years ago when I was still naive enough to trust him. The ones that had stolen my software from me. I could fight this in court, drag it out, spend years entangled in legal battles with a company that was already dead. Or I could end this, right now. The next morning, I made my final move. Instead of fighting Dominic's lawsuit, I bought out Vaughn Enterprises' remaining debt. I didn't just defeat them, I owned them. Legally, I forced Vaughn Enterprises into liquidation. It was over. That evening, I received one last phone call from my father. His voice was tight, controlled. "You're destroying your own family name." I let a beat of silence stretch between us. Then, quietly, I said, "No." "You did that a long time ago." And then I hung up. The name Vaughn Enterprises would disappear forever, and I was the one who made it happen. But even as I stood victorious, the past had one final truth to reveal. I walked through what was left of Vaughn Enterprises, my footsteps echoing in the hollowed-out space, the once grand lobby, where high-profile deals had been made, where executives had whispered about market domination, was now empty. The sleek black and gold logo that had once stood as a symbol of my father's empire was being stripped from the walls, the letters unceremoniously taken down, piece by piece. The company was gone. I should have felt something, vindication, satisfaction, even regret. But as I stood there, watching the last remnants of Vaughn Enterprises disappear, I felt only finality. It was over. A few days later, an envelope arrived at my office. No return address, just my name, written in familiar handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before finally opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, aged at the edges, the ink slightly smudged. Dominic Vaughn's handwriting. "Serafina, you were always the one who deserved it." But I was too proud to admit it. I never truly believed Celeste was the right choice. I knew you were stronger, smarter, capable of building something greater than Vaughn Enterprises could ever be. But I also knew that as long as I held you here, under my roof, under my control, you'd never become the woman you were meant to be. So I let you go the only way I knew how. I pushed you. I wanted you to prove me wrong, and you did. Maybe one day you'll understand. Dominic. I stared at the letter, my fingers tightening around the edges. This wasn't an apology. This wasn't a plea for forgiveness. This was justification. Even at the end, my father believed he had orchestrated everything, that his cruelty, his betrayal, had somehow been a lesson. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. I wouldn't burn it. I wouldn't frame it. It would sit there, forgotten, just like the man who wrote it. A few days later, I met them, Dominic and Celeste. One last time. It was strange seeing them like this. My father, once an unshakable force in the business world, now looked small. His once pristine suit hung loosely on him, his face aged beyond his years. Celeste sat beside him, her usual arrogance dulled, though she still held herself high, as if pretending she was still untouchable. But we all knew the truth. They had lost. Celeste exhaled, crossing her arms. "Are you happy now, Serafina?" Her voice was hollow, edged with resentment. I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. "I didn't destroy you. You did that to yourselves." A bitter laugh escaped her lips, but she said nothing. Dominic cleared his throat. "We could rebuild. he said, as if the past year had never happened. As if he could erase the war between us with just those words. We could start over, together. I didn't hesitate. No. A flicker of something, defeat, crossed his face. Some things, I said quietly, are meant to end. And with that, I turned and walked away. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back. A week later, I stood at the top of Nova Systems headquarters, watching the city stretch out before me. This company, this empire, was mine. Not stolen, not gifted, not handed down. Built. By me. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. As I stand here today, looking at everything I've built, I realize something important. Power isn't given, it's taken. Respect isn't handed to you. You earn it. And sometimes, the best thing that can happen is being forced to walk away from something that was never meant for you. This journey wasn't just about winning a corporate war. It was about proving that self-worth isn't defined by family approval or past failures. It's about knowing your own value, even when the world tries to diminish it. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. No one can take away what you create with your own hands. They might steal your ideas, betray your trust, or try to rewrite history, but as long as you keep moving forward, they will never own your future. So, to anyone watching who's ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told they weren't good enough, don't let them decide your story. The people who try to bury you forget one thing. You are the seed. What do you think? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to walk away to find your true power? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this video resonated with you, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another powerful story. The best is yet to come. I'm Celine, and I think my husband just tried to poison me. It started with a simple cup of tea, a strange smell, a gut feeling I couldn't ignore. So I switched cups with my sister-in-law. Moments later, she was gasping for breath. And my husband? He wasn't surprised. But that was only the beginning. The missing money, the whispered conversations behind my back, the way my career started crumbling overnight, all while Vesper, his sister, smiled like she already knew how this would end. I thought I was imagining things. I thought I was losing my mind. But the truth? It was so much worse. Sunday brunch at Vesper's estate was a ritual I had never been able to avoid. Alaric insisted it was about family, about keeping peace. But to me, it always felt more like a performance. A carefully curated event where Vesper played the gracious host, and everyone else was expected to fall in line. The house, a modern masterpiece of glass and steel, sat like a fortress against the Chicago skyline. Inside, everything was cold, minimalist art, sharp-edged furniture, and an atmosphere that felt more curated than lived in. I had never felt at home here, even before my suspicions began. Alaric had been quiet on the way over, his hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. I didn't ask why. We had stopped having those kinds of conversations months ago. As we sat at the long glass dining table, I forced a smile while Vesper did what she always did: command the room. She was effortlessly poised, her presence demanding attention. The kind of woman who could make an insult sound like a compliment. And lately, every glance she threw my way carried something unspoken, something dangerous. I couldn't explain it. Not yet. Alaric reached across the table, setting a cup of tea in front of me with a small, deliberate movement. "You should try this, Celine," he said, his voice steady. "I made it just for you." I hesitated, my fingers brushing the handle. A faint metallic scent curled into my nose, sharp and wrong. It was subtle, something most people wouldn't notice. But I did. Vesper sipped her coffee, watching me with an expression that was almost amused. My stomach tightened. "Drink," Alaric urged, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Something inside me screamed no. I reached for a napkin, faking a small, clumsy movement as it slipped from my fingers. "Oh," I muttered, reaching for it, my free hand shifting the cups just slightly, just enough. When I straightened, I lifted the tea I had switched. Vesper continued to sip her coffee, her attention flitting from me to Alaric like she was gauging something unseen. I lifted the cup toward my lips, pretending to take a sip. And then Vesper's breath hitched. She set her coffee down, her expression flickering, just for a second, before her hand reached toward her throat. A single heartbeat passed, then another. Her face paled. The cup in her hand slipped, crashing against the table with a sharp, shattering sound. Alaric leapt up, knocking over his chair, but the look on his face wasn't shock. It wasn't concern. It was terror. Vesper gasped, one hand clutching at her throat as she stumbled back, knocking against the pristine white tablecloth. My pulse pounded in my ears. This wasn't an accident. Someone had planned this, and Alaric wasn't surprised. The realization settled like a cold weight in my chest. My husband knew more than he let on. I lay awake long after Alaric's breathing had evened beside me, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Vesper was in the hospital, yet he hadn't mentioned it to me once. No frantic calls to check on her. No whispered conversations about what had gone wrong. It was as if he had simply chosen to erase the entire event from his mind. But I couldn't erase it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way his face had twisted. Not in shock, not in concern, but in something far worse. He was terrified, but not for Vesper. For himself. By the time the early morning light seeped through the blinds, I had made up my mind. I needed to start looking for answers, and I needed to start at home. Alaric moved through our morning routine as if nothing had happened. He hummed softly while making coffee, scrolled through his phone at the breakfast table, even gave me his usual peck on the cheek before heading to work. It was all so normal, but I wasn't playing along anymore. I poured a cup of coffee, but left it untouched as I reached for my phone. A familiar anxiety crawled up my spine as I opened my banking app, something I rarely did because Alaric handled all our finances. But today, I wasn't looking for reassurance. I was looking for evidence. It didn't take long to find. A large withdrawal. Thousands of dollars. Gone. My breath caught in my throat as I scrolled through the transaction history. The money had been moved to an account I didn't recognize, and worse, the withdrawals hadn't just started recently. They had been happening for months. My hands clenched into fists. I tried to keep my breathing steady as I went through every line, every date, every slow, methodical theft from our savings. I thought about the way Alaric had been working late, the way he had started brushing off questions about money, the way he had stopped mentioning certain cases at work. It all clicked into place. By the time Alaric walked through the door that evening, my patience had evaporated. "Where did the money go?" I asked, my voice sharp and steady. He paused in the doorway, his fingers tightening around the strap of his briefcase. "What money?" I held up my phone, the screen glowing with the evidence. "This money, thousands of dollars, Alaric. Where did it go?" His expression barely flickered, but I caught it. The hesitation, the flicker of nerves. He set his briefcase down with an exaggerated sigh, as if I were overreacting. "It's an investment, Celine. I was going to tell you." My stomach twisted. "An investment in what?" Alaric rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my gaze. "Something personal, a deal I'm working on." "That's not an answer." I waited. He didn't say anything. The silence between us stretched, thick and heavy, until he finally looked at me. His voice was softer this time, almost pleading. "Trust me." But I didn't. Not anymore. Something bigger was happening here. The tea. His reaction to Vesper. The money. It wasn't just one thing. It was everything. It was my entire life, unraveling thread by thread. Alaric exhaled sharply and grabbed his briefcase again. "I have work to do," he muttered, brushing past me toward the office. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the untouched cup of coffee on the table, the scent of roasted beans filling the air. What else had I been blind to? I opened my laptop and took a deep breath. It was time to uncover the truth. The silence of my home felt heavier than usual, pressing in on me like an invisible force. The missing money, the tea, Alaric's hollow reassurances, it was all leading somewhere, but I still didn't know where. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard as I debated my next move. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Banking records? Correspondence between Alaric and Vesper? A trail of evidence leading me to the thing I already knew deep down. Something was terribly wrong. The sharp ping of my phone startled me. I glanced at the screen. A text message. Unknown number. "They're not done with you. Be careful." My stomach dropped. I swallowed hard, gripping my phone tighter as I stared at the message, my mind racing. Who was they? And how did this person know what was happening? I called the number immediately, pressing the phone to my ear. No answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. A chill crawled down my spine. Someone was watching. Someone new. I stood up abruptly, pacing the living room, my pulse hammering. Was it Vesper? Was this another one of her power plays, a way to keep me unsettled? Or was it someone else, someone who knew more than I did? I took a shaky breath and forced myself to focus. I couldn't afford to lose control now. I had work to do. The next morning, I woke up nauseous. At first, I thought it was stress, the weight of everything finally pressing too hard against me. But as I forced myself out of bed, the dizziness hit. My stomach clenched painfully, and I barely made it to the bathroom before I was on my knees, heaving. The bitter taste of bile coated my mouth as I gripped the sink, my reflection in the mirror pale and drawn. Number not again. The tea. The familiar feeling of my body betraying me. Was it something I ate? Or was it something more sinister? I didn't have time to think. I was supposed to lead a major client presentation today, one that could land my company one of its biggest accounts of the year. I couldn't afford to miss it. I splashed cold water on my face, forced down the nausea, and dressed as quickly as I could. The drive to my office was a blur, every red light feeling like an eternity. By the time I stepped into the lobby, I was still shaky, but at least I was there. Then I saw her. Vesper. Standing in the conference room, smiling. The room was already full. Executives seated. The presentation already underway. My presentation. I moved forward, my heels clicking against the marble floor, but before I could reach the door, my boss intercepted me. "Celine," he said, shifting uncomfortably. I didn't think you'd make it in today." I narrowed my eyes. "Why?" He hesitated, his gaze flickering toward the conference room. The client preferred a different approach. Vesper stepped in to handle it. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. She set this up. She knew I wouldn't make it in time, knew I'd be sick, knew this was the perfect moment to swoop in and take what was mine. I pushed past him and stepped into the room, just in time to hear Vesper's closing remarks. The executives around the table nodded in approval, some even smiling. The contract was practically signed. Vesper caught my eye, and there it was. That smirk. The look that said, "You can't stop me. You never could." My nails dug into my palms as my vision blurred with rage. I stormed out of the building, my heartbeat deafening in my ears. This wasn't paranoia. This was real. Someone was actively sabotaging my life. I clenched my fists, the words barely a whisper. I won't let them win. That night, I sat down with a single thought in mind. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I had spent too long reacting, too long playing defense. Vesper had made her move, and she had won. She stole my deal, manipulated my boss, and left me looking like a fool. But this wasn't over. I grabbed my laptop and started searching. If there was one thing I knew about Vesper, it was that she left a trail. People like her always did. The only question was how deep it went, and whether Alaric was tangled in it more than I already feared. A gust of wind rattled the windows, making the silence of my house feel even heavier. I glanced at my phone, half expecting another anonymous message, another veiled threat. Nothing. But they wouldn't warn me twice. The next morning, I walked to my car, still lost in thought, until I noticed something that stopped me cold. All 4 of my tires, slashed. My pulse pounded as I stepped closer, my heels crunching against broken rubber. A small folded note was tucked under my windshield wiper. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. "Let it go before you get hurt." The letters were bold, printed, no signature, no trace of emotion, just a warning. I scanned the empty parking lot, my breath shallow. Someone had been here. Someone had been close enough to do this without being seen. This wasn't a game anymore. I shoved the note into my coat pocket and took a cab to work, my mind already racing toward my next move. I needed someone who could help me navigate this, someone who could find the answers I couldn't. I needed a private investigator. By lunchtime, I was sitting across from Nolan Graves, a man who looked like he had seen too much of the world and didn't care for any of it. He had sharp eyes and a voice that carried no unnecessary words. "This isn't just about my husband," I told him. "This is bigger than that." He leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. "Then you should know. You might not like what you find." I already knew that. I slid the file I had started compiling across the table. Screenshots, bank statements, emails that felt off, but I hadn't been able to prove were manipulated. "Start here. I need to know how deep Alaric is in, and I need to know what Vesper is hiding." He nodded, taking the file. "Give me a day." By the time I got home that evening, exhaustion tugged at every part of me. But I couldn't rest. Not yet. 24 hours later, Nolan called. "Meet me at my office," he said. "You'll want to see this in person." I arrived within the hour, my stomach in knots. He didn't waste time with small talk. Instead, he slid a folder across the desk. "Alaric isn't just involved," Nolan said. "He's drowning." The papers inside told me everything I needed to know. Debt. A lot of it. Loans I never knew about. Transactions that linked back to companies with ties to Vesper. It wasn't just money disappearing from our accounts. Alaric had been funneling money into something far bigger than I had imagined. And Vesper? She wasn't just watching over him. She was controlling him. My hands tightened around the edges of the folder as my vision blurred with rage. He had lied to me. Over and over again. I walked into our house that night like a woman on a mission. Alaric barely looked up from his drink when I threw the folder onto the table in front of him. "How long have you been lying to me?" My voice was cold, steady. His fingers hovered over the papers, but he didn't touch them. He didn't need to. He already knew what was inside. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, finally, he exhaled. "Celine, Don't," I cut him off. "No excuses. No more lies." He ran a hand through his hair, looking more exhausted than I had ever seen him. "I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice." His jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw it. The cracks, the guilt, the fear. But it didn't matter anymore. I stepped back, my voice unwavering. "If you or Vesper come for me again, I promise I'll return the favor." Alaric's face paled. I didn't wait for him to respond. I walked out the door, my hands trembling as I closed it behind me. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was furious. The next morning, I called my lawyer. If Alaric wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd find another way to make him talk. Sitting across from Margot Hastings, a woman known for dismantling men like Alaric in court, I felt an unsettling mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a quiet, burning resolve. She flipped through the documents Nolan had uncovered, her manicured nails tapping against the desk. When she finally exhaled, the sound was sharp. "This is worse than I expected." I already knew that. Margot slid the papers back toward me. "You want to go through with this?" I reached for the pen without hesitation. "I want him out of my life." As the ink dried on the divorce petition, something inside me shifted. A door had closed. There was no turning back. That night, I walked into our house with a stack of legal papers in my hand. Alaric was in the living room, a half-empty whiskey glass beside him, his tie loosened, his face unreadable. When he saw the documents, his expression didn't change. I dropped them onto the coffee table between us. "Sign them!" He barely glanced at the papers. Instead, his gaze lifted to mine, something dark flickering behind his eyes. "You don't understand what you're doing." A bitter laugh slipped from my lips. "No, Alaric, I finally do." His jaw clenched. "Vesper's not going to let this go." I leaned forward, voice steady. "Neither am I." The next day, the war became official. Vesper orchestrated a family meeting, as if this was some domestic dispute instead of the calculated sabotage she had spent months perfecting. I arrived at her penthouse, greeted by a staff of assistants who acted as if this were a casual gathering rather than a battlefield. Alaric was already there, standing beside her. His posture was stiff, his face unreadable. Vesper sipped from a delicate glass of red wine, her smile the picture of amusement. "You're making a mistake, Celine." I held her gaze. "So are you." Her smirk didn't falter. "You think you can just walk away from this? That I'll let you destroy everything I've built?" I tilted my head. "You think I'm the one destroying things?" Alaric cleared his throat, his voice tight. "Both of you need to stop." Vesper turned to him, eyes narrowing. "Oh, Alaric, don't act like you're some innocent bystander. You made your choices." His composure cracked, frustration flashing across his face. "You both act like I have a choice, but neither of you understands what it means to lose everything." I stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. He was already lost. Vesper stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to make it feel intimate, threatening. "You're fighting a battle you can't win, Celine." I took a slow breath, steadying myself. "We'll see about that." As I turned to leave, her voice followed me. "You should have listened when you had the chance." I walked out without looking back. Vesper wasn't bluffing. Something bigger was coming. The next morning, I found out just how far Vesper was willing to go to destroy me. I woke up feeling different. Lighter. As if, for the first time in months, I had taken back a sliver of control. Filing for divorce had been a battle cry, a declaration that I wouldn't be manipulated anymore. But that didn't mean I was safe. A part of me expected retaliation. Vesper was too calculated to let my defiance go unanswered. Alaric was too tangled in her web to walk away without a fight. Still, I had no idea what form their next move would take. I found out soon enough. A few hours into my morning, my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Celine Bennett?" a woman's voice asked, sharp but controlled. I frowned. "Who's asking?" "My name is Claire Renford," she said. "I need to speak with you. It's about Vesper." I stiffened. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone," Claire interrupted. "Meet me at the Riverton Cafe in an hour. You'll want to hear what I have to say." The line went dead. My hands tightened around the phone. Whoever she was, she knew something. And if she was calling me now, it meant Vesper had hurt her too. An hour later, I stepped into the cafe, scanning the tables until I spotted a woman sitting alone near the window. Her dark brown hair was pulled back into a sleek ponytail, her blazer pressed to perfection, but the tension in her posture gave her away. She was waiting for a fight. "Celine," she greeted, motioning for me to sit. I slid into the chair opposite her, folding my hands on the table. "You said you had something to tell me." Claire exhaled slowly, her fingers tapping against her cup. "You're not the first one she's done this to." A chill crept up my spine. She continued, her voice lowering. 5 years ago, I was a senior executive at a top firm. I was good at my job, too good. Vesper saw me as competition. At first, it was small things, a stolen client, a missed promotion. Then it escalated. I swallowed. "What happened?" Claire's jaw tightened. "She framed me for fraud." The words hit like a slap. She planted fabricated documents under my name, she explained. I was discredited, blacklisted. My reputation was destroyed overnight. By the time I cleared my name, it was too late. No firm would touch me. I shook my head, my pulse hammering. And now she's trying to do the same to me. Claire nodded. She plays the long game. She doesn't just want to win. She wants to ruin you. The weight of her words settled over me, suffocating. I had thought this was about Alaric, about business, about revenge. But Vesper wasn't just a corporate shark. She was a predator. I leaned forward. Why are you telling me this now? A humorless smile crossed Claire's lips. Because you're the first person who's ever fought back. Something inside me clicked into place. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about ending her. I pushed my coffee aside. We take her down, together. Claire studied me for a moment before nodding. Agreed. But as I stepped out of the cafe, a cold certainty settled in my chest. If Vesper found out what we were planning, she wouldn't hesitate to escalate. Celine clenched her fists. If Vesper thought she could destroy her, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. I had played defense for too long. Now it was time to go on the offensive. Sitting across from Claire in my apartment, I spread the files across the table. Pages filled with transactions, contracts, and whispers of destruction. Lives that Vesper had dismantled without a second thought. We have enough, Claire murmured, scanning the documents. But we need something that ties it all together, something undeniable. I nodded, my fingers tightening around my coffee mug. Vesper was too powerful to take down with speculation. I needed hard, irrefutable proof. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. Nolan Graves. I've got something for you, he said, voice clipped. And trust me, you're going to want to see it in person. I met him an hour later in his office. He slid a single folder across the desk. This, he said, is what Vesper doesn't want anyone to find. My pulse pounded as I flipped it open. The first page alone made my stomach drop. A missing persons case. A man who had vanished years ago. The deeper I read, the clearer it became. He wasn't just anyone. He was someone who had gotten in Vesper's way. Someone who had threatened her power. And now, he was gone. A sick realization settled over me. Vesper didn't just ruin careers. She erased people. I exhaled shakily, my hands gripping the pages. This is it, I whispered. This is what will take her down. But before I could act, Vesper made her move. The next morning, the headlines hit like a wrecking ball. Celine Bennett, a dangerous manipulator. Former employees speak out. Is she unstable? Hidden scandals. The dark side of a rising star? Every article was crafted to smear my name. Fake accusations, distorted truths, carefully planted whispers meant to unravel my reputation overnight. My inbox flooded. Clients withdrew contracts. My boss called, his voice uneasy, telling me to stay away from the office until this blows over. I had expected retaliation. But this was war. Claire stormed into my apartment hours later, phone in hand. She just made the biggest mistake of her life. I lifted my gaze. What do you mean? She got sloppy, Claire said, shoving her phone toward me. Look at this. I read the messages on the screen, leaked emails, conversations between Vesper and a journalist, instructions to fabricate the articles, proof that every word written about me was a lie orchestrated by her. A slow smile formed on my lips. She had tried to destroy me, and now I had everything I needed to destroy her. I spent the next 24 hours carefully crafting my next move. By morning, I sent the files to one journalist I trusted, someone I knew Vesper couldn't buy. And then I waited. It didn't take long. By noon, the internet exploded with a new wave of headlines. Vesper Bennett exposed. A trail of manipulation and ruined lives. Fraud, lies, and power. The woman behind the curtain. Breaking, new evidence links. Vesper Bennett to a missing persons case. The tides had turned. But Vesper wasn't finished. That afternoon, a courier arrived at my door with an envelope, a legal summons. I was being sued for defamation. I let out a breath, staring at the papers in my hands. This was it. The final battle. I straightened my blazer and walked into the courthouse. It was time to end this once and for all. The cameras flashed as I stepped forward. The world was watching now. I adjusted my blazer, forcing my shoulders back, exuding confidence I wasn't sure I felt. The weight of the trial pressed against my chest like a physical force, but I refused to let it show. The courthouse steps were crowded with journalists, microphones shoved toward my face, voices overlapping in a chaotic chorus. Celine, how do you respond to the claims against you? Did you fabricate evidence against Vesper Bennett? Are you out for revenge? I didn't stop. I didn't respond. That was what Vesper wanted, for me to react emotionally, to crack under pressure. Not today. Inside, the courtroom was already buzzing. Vesper sat across the aisle, her usual poise intact, her smirk a mask of confidence. But I knew better. She was unraveling. Alaric sat in the gallery, shoulders tense, his face unreadable. He had spent so long pretending to be neutral, avoiding the consequences of his choices. But neutrality was no longer an option. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. All rise. I exhaled slowly as the trial began. Vesper's attorney went first. A man with sharp features and a voice polished from years of discrediting people like me. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court," he began, his tone smooth, rehearsed. "What we have here is a bitter woman, someone who has been outmaneuvered in business and in life, and now seeks to destroy the one person who has always outshone her." He gestured toward Vesper, who lowered her gaze, feigning humility. "Celine Bennett has fabricated accusations in a desperate attempt to bring my client down. But the truth is, Vesper Bennett is a successful, respected businesswoman, and these claims are nothing more than a jealous vendetta." I clenched my jaw. Every word was carefully crafted, designed to make me look unstable, vengeful. Then it was my attorney's turn. Margot Hastings stood, adjusting the cuffs of her jacket before stepping toward the jury. "Let's talk about truth," she began, her voice measured but powerful. "Because today, that's all that matters." She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we are not here because my client is vengeful. We are here because of a calculated, deliberate effort to destroy her life. We will present evidence, undeniable proof, of financial fraud, sabotage, and manipulation that spans years. What we are about to reveal will show you exactly who Vesper Bennett really is." The tension in the room thickened. Then, Margot called her first witness, Claire Renford. I watched as Claire walked to the stand, her movements controlled, her expression unreadable. But when she faced the courtroom, her voice was unwavering. "For years, I believed I had been careless," she began, "that I had made mistakes, that my career collapsed because of my own failures." She glanced at Vesper, her eyes narrowing. "But I was wrong. I wasn't careless. I wasn't reckless. I was targeted." She detailed everything. How Vesper manipulated key players in the industry to isolate her. How fabricated evidence destroyed her career. How she was blacklisted. The jury leaned in, absorbing every word. Then Margot handed Claire a file. "Can you confirm the contents of this document?" Claire nodded, her fingers tightening around the pages. "These are emails, bank statements, communications between Vesper Bennett and my former employers, detailing a systematic effort to sabotage my career." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Vesper's smirk finally wavered. Then came the final blow. Margot approached the judge's bench and handed over a sealed envelope. "Your Honor, we have one last piece of evidence." The judge opened it, scanning the contents before his expression hardened. Margot turned to the courtroom. "These are messages between Vesper Bennett and Alaric Bennett, discussing the targeted sabotage of my client's career. In these messages, we see not only intent to discredit her, but discussions about how to ensure she was out of the way, physically." Gasps erupted. Alaric stiffened, Every eye in the room turned to him. Vesper's nails dug into the table, her mask cracking. "This is ridiculous," she hissed under her breath. But it was too late. The judge's gavel struck. "Order in the court!" And just like that, the tide shifted. The jury deliberated for only an hour. When they returned, the verdict was swift. Guilty, on multiple counts of fraud, defamation, and conspiracy. Vesper didn't flinch as the sentence was read, but when the bailiffs approached, her composure broke. As they placed cuffs around her wrists, she turned toward me, her voice a venomous whisper. "You'll regret this." I met her gaze, my own voice steady. "No, Vesper, I won't." She was led away. And just like that, her empire crumbled. The weight on my chest lifted as I stepped outside, the sunlight warm against my skin. For the first time in years, I was free. But what came next? The battle was won, but healing would take time. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to start again. The television flickered in the corner of my apartment, the news anchor's voice droning over footage of Vesper being escorted from the courthouse. Vesper Bennett, once a titan of the corporate world, now faces multiple charges of fraud, conspiracy, and defamation. Sources say her legal team is scrambling for leniency, but experts predict a severe sentencing. I turned away from the screen, barely listening. I didn't need the world to tell me that Vesper had lost. I had seen it in her eyes when they took her away. The moment she realized she was no longer untouchable. Alaric had disappeared from the public eye. His law firm had distanced itself from him, his reputation irreparably tarnished. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt tired. I had spent months fighting, clawing my way out of a war I never asked for. And now that it was over, I didn't know what to do with myself. The knock at my door came late that evening. I opened it without thinking, and there he was. Alaric. His once pristine suits were gone, replaced by something wrinkled and disheveled. He looked like a man who had been unraveling for weeks. "I didn't know how deep I was in until it was too late," he said, his voice hoarse. I didn't step aside to let him in. "You knew enough," I replied. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "I thought I could fix it. That if I kept Vesper happy, kept her in control, I could find a way out." He swallowed hard. I was wrong. I wanted to feel something for him, pity, sadness, nostalgia for the man I once thought I knew. But there was nothing left. "I don't hate you, Alaric," I said, "but I don't forgive you either." His shoulders sagged, like he had been holding on to some desperate hope that I would absolve him. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. I closed the door. The next morning, I met Margot at her office to sign the final divorce papers. As the ink dried, I felt something shift inside me. A weight lifting, a door finally, permanently closed. It was over. Later that afternoon, I met Claire at a small cafe by the river. We sat outside, the autumn breeze curling around us, warm coffee cups in hand. "We finally won, didn't we?" she asked, stirring her drink absent-mindedly. I thought about it for a moment. "It doesn't feel like winning," I admitted. She nodded. "Because it's not about them, it's about us. We survived." That, at least, was something. Before we left, Claire reached into her bag and pulled out a crisp white envelope. "A recruiter sent this to me," she said, sliding it across the table. "I think it was meant for you." I frowned, picking it up. Inside was a letter from Harrison and Cole, one of the most prestigious marketing firms in the country. "Celine Bennett, we would like to extend an offer to lead our next major campaign. Your reputation for resilience, innovation, and strategic leadership speaks for itself. We hope to discuss this opportunity further." I read it twice, then a third time. "Looks like you have a future to get back to," Claire said with a small smile. I took a deep breath. Maybe this was the fresh start I needed. That night, I walked through the city, the glow of streetlights reflecting off the pavement. For the first time in years, I felt free. I wasn't running anymore. I whispered to myself, "I'm not looking back." Then I stepped forward, ready for whatever came next. because this time I was in control of my own story. As I step forward into this new chapter of my life, I can't help but look back at everything that has led me here. The betrayals, the battles, the heartbreak, it all forced me to become someone stronger than I ever thought I could be. And if there's one lesson I've learned, it's this: your power is yours alone. Never let anyone take it from you. For too long, I let others define my worth. I trusted people who didn't deserve it, gave second chances to those who had already burned me. But here's the truth: when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Vesper's game wasn't just about winning, it was about control. And Alaric? He made the mistake of thinking that standing still was the same as standing strong. In the end, both of them fell, not because I sought revenge, but because the truth has a way of catching up with those who try to bury it. Maybe you've faced your own Vesper. Maybe you've had someone try to take everything from you: your career, your confidence, your voice. Maybe you're still in that fight. If you are, let this be your reminder. You don't have to stay silent. You don't have to play small. You are stronger than they think. But what about you? Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic situation? Have you ever been underestimated, only to prove everyone wrong? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below. Press 1 if this video resonated with you, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't enjoy this, tell me why. I'm always open to learning from your perspective. And hey, if you want to hear more stories like this, real stories of resilience, justice, and redemption, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There's always another story to tell, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. See you in the next one. Hi, I'm Sigrid, and let me tell you something. Getting food poisoning was the least painful part of my story. It started with a fever, a stomachache so bad I could barely stand. I thought my family would be there for me. Instead, they packed their bags, took my credit card, and left for Los Angeles. Without me. "We're off to Hollywood. Don't call." That's what they said as I lay there, barely able to move. But that was just the beginning. The betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined. They drained my bank account. They sabotaged my career. And when I finally fought back, they played the victim. I woke up to a sharp pain twisting in my stomach, the kind that sent waves of nausea rolling through my body. My skin felt clammy, my head light, and the room spun as I tried to sit up. Something was wrong. I barely managed to grab my phone from the nightstand, my fingers trembling as I typed a message. "Mom, I think I have food poisoning. I need someone to take me to the hospital." I waited, no reply. I tried calling, pressing the phone against my ear while my body shivered under the thin blanket. The ringing seemed to last forever before it went to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. Through the thin walls of my apartment, I could hear them. My mother's voice, high and animated, talking about hotel bookings. My sister, Vesper, laughing. The clinking of coffee cups. I forced myself up, gripping the wall as I stumbled toward the living room. My vision blurred, but I could still make them out. Mom adjusting her travel scarf in the mirror. Vesper lounging on the couch with her legs tucked under her, scrolling through her phone. I cleared my throat. "Mom!" She barely glanced at me. "Honey, you look awful." "I feel awful," I rasped. "I think I need to go to the ER." She sighed, setting her purse down. "Oh, sweetheart, you're just overreacting. It's probably just a stomach bug. Rest, drink some water, you'll be fine." Vesper snorted. "Yeah, take a Tums or something. We're leaving soon." I gripped the doorframe for support. "I can barely stand up." Mom turned back to the mirror, fixing her lipstick. "Sigrid, we have a flight to catch." I blinked. "You're still going?" She looked at me as if I had just asked the dumbest question in the world. "Of course, honey. The hotel is non-refundable." I stared at her, then at Vesper, who was still scrolling through her phone like this was all just a mild inconvenience. My father, Calder, stood by the door, checking his watch. He hadn't said a single word. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "So, you're just leaving me here? Sick? Alone?" Mom let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. Oh, don't be dramatic, Sigrid. You're a grown woman. Vesper smirked. Yeah, you'll survive. I wanted to scream, to grab their suitcases and throw them out the window, to demand even the smallest shred of concern. But I didn't. I just stood there, nausea twisting my stomach, watching as my own family put their vacation over my well-being. Calder finally spoke, his voice neutral. We should get going. Mom picked up her designer bag, looping it over her shoulder. We'll call when we land, sweetheart. Vesper grabbed her suitcase handle, flashing me a condescending smile. Don't call us, we'll be busy. Then they were gone. The door shut, leaving behind an eerie silence. The sound of their luggage wheels against the hallway floor faded, and I stood there, feeling the weight of it all settle into my chest. I was nothing to them. Not really. My legs wobbled as I stumbled back to the couch, my head pounding. I grabbed my phone again, not sure why. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of desperate hope that I'd see something, anything, to prove that I mattered. I opened my banking app. My stomach clenched. $0 available. They didn't just abandon me. They took my money, too. I stared at my phone screen, my vision blurring as the numbers burned into my brain. 0. How? My hands shook as I refreshed the page, willing it to be some sort of mistake, a glitch, a banking error. But the balance didn't change. They took everything. A shiver ran down my spine, not just from the fever still clinging to my body, but from the sharp realization creeping in. They hadn't just left me to fend for myself while I was sick. They had drained my account before walking out the door, boarding their first-class flight to Los Angeles like nothing had happened. My stomach twisted as I swiped to my credit card statements, my fingers moving on autopilot. The numbers and locations popped up like flashing red warning signs. Beverly Hills Hotel, $1,200. First-class flight upgrades, $500. Hollywood VIP tour, $300. Fine dining, $150. I felt my nausea surge, but this time it had nothing to do with the food poisoning. They didn't even ask. They just took it. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. No, this wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I tried to breathe through the dizziness, but the betrayal sat heavy in my chest, pressing down like a weight I couldn't shake off. My body screamed for rest, for sleep, for anything but this. But my mind was already spiraling. I needed answers. Now I hit the call button, dialing my mother first. Ring, voicemail. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. I clenched my jaw and tried my father next, knowing deep down that it was useless. Nothing. Fine. I scrolled down, my thumb hovering over Vesper's name. Before I could call, a text popped up from her instead. Vesper. Relax, it's just a few charges. We'll pay you back when we can. I stared at the words, my pulse pounding in my ears. A few charges? My entire account was gone. My fingers flew across the screen before I could stop myself. Me. Did you seriously steal my money? Read. No response. I tried again. Me. This isn't a few charges, Vesper. You maxed out my card. That was my rent money. A new message appeared. Vesper. Oh my God, you're so dramatic. You act like we robbed you. We just borrowed it. We'll pay you back. Chill. Chill? My blood turned ice cold. Me. You stole from me. Without asking. That's not borrowing. That's theft. Nothing. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mother. I sucked in a breath and picked up. Mom! Oh, sweetheart, she cut in, her voice light, as if I had just interrupted her during brunch. You don't need to be so upset over this. I gritted my teeth. You took my money. There was a long pause, followed by a soft chuckle. Now don't be ridiculous, Sigrid. There must be a mistake. Maybe the bank mixed up the charges. I blinked, gripping the phone tighter. Gaslighting. She was gaslighting me. Again. Mom, I just checked my statements. The Beverly Hills Hotel, the flight upgrades, the fine dining, all of it came from my account. There's no mistake. She sighed like I was exhausting her. Sigrid, honey, we didn't want to bother you while you were sick. We figured it was fine since you weren't using it. I nearly dropped the phone. You left me while I was sick, and now I have nothing in my account. She let out a little laugh. Oh, don't be so dramatic. The world tilted. She wasn't even denying it. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't even trying to justify it properly. I felt something inside me snap, like a thread stretched too tight for too long. They didn't care. They never had. And I was done pretending that they did. I hung up. Before I could let the guilt sink its claws into me, before the self-doubt and second-guessing crept in, I pulled up my banking app again. My hands still trembled, but this time, it wasn't from sickness. I moved quickly. First, I locked my credit cards. Then, I canceled every single automatic payment linked to them. Finally, I set up alerts for any future transactions. No more money, no more access, no more control. I exhaled, my body still weak, but my mind sharper than it had been in years. They used me for the last time. And this time, they were going to regret it. The next morning, the sky outside my window was the same shade of gray I felt inside. Heavy clouds pressed against the skyline, the air thick and still. A storm was coming. I sat on the couch, my body still weak from the sickness, but my mind sharper than it had been in years. I had locked my cards, cut off their access to my finances, and now I was waiting for the fallout. It didn't take long. My phone lit up with a call. Mom! I inhaled deeply, pressing my thumb against the screen before answering. Sweetheart, she cooed, her voice syrupy sweet, like nothing had happened. How are you feeling? My grip on the phone tightened. Let's not do this, I said flatly. Why is my credit card maxed out on your trip? There was a beat of silence, then a soft, disbelieving laugh. Oh, honey, that can't be right. Are you sure there isn't some mistake? Don't play dumb with me, Mom. I checked the charges. The Beverly Hills Hotel, first-class upgrades, dinner at a 5-star restaurant, all of it on my account. She tisked. Well, maybe the bank got things mixed up. You know how those systems are. I felt my stomach turn. Are you seriously blaming the bank? She sighed, exasperated. Why are you making this a fight? It's just a misunderstanding. There it was. The same script she had used on me my whole life. Downplay, deflect, dismiss. I shut my eyes, gripping my knee to ground myself. This isn't a misunderstanding, I said, my voice low and firm. It's a pattern. A sharp exhale came from the other end. Sigrid, honestly, you're being ridiculous. Ridiculous. That word alone sent me spiraling back through years of memories. I was 16, working weekends at a grocery store to save up for a car. One day, I came home to find my savings wiped clean. Mom had borrowed it to cover rent. You should be proud to help the family, she had said, her tone almost scolding, like I was the selfish one. This is what responsible daughters do. I was 19, working 2 part-time jobs while taking full-time college courses. Vesper was on a fully paid semester abroad, courtesy of my parents. It's only fair, Mom had told me. She's older. She deserves it more. I was 23, fresh out of college, drowning in student debt. Every paycheck I earned went toward my family's bills while Vesper spent her days shopping, jobless by choice. Mom's reasoning? You're doing so well. You can afford to help a little longer. I was never their daughter. I was their safety net. I snapped back to the present, my fingers curling into a fist. Mom, let's cut the crap. You didn't lose your card. You used mine. Watch your tone, young lady, she snapped, her fake sweetness vanishing in an instant. No. My voice was calm but unyielding. You don't get to play the victim, not this time. Silence. I could practically hear her seething on the other end. I'm done funding your vacations. I'm done being your bank. I locked my accounts. You're on your own. Her voice rose. You ungrateful little... Click. I hung up. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel the usual wave of self-doubt creeping in. I felt free. But freedom, I knew, always came with a price. Thunder rumbled in the distance. My phone vibrated again. Vesper. I stared at the screen, my pulse steady. Let's see what she had to say. The vibration of my phone rattled against the nightstand, dragging me out of a restless sleep. My body still felt sluggish from the last few days, but it wasn't sickness that twisted in my gut anymore. It was something worse, anticipation. I reached for my phone, squinting against the glow of the screen. 27 missed calls, 18 unread messages. Vesper. My stomach tightened as I scrolled through them. Vesper. You didn't have to be so dramatic, you know. Vesper. Mom is crying. Are you happy now? Vesper. Fix this, Sigrid. We're family. I let out a slow breath, my grip tightening. Family. That word didn't mean what it used to, not anymore. I locked my phone without responding. I didn't have the energy for another pointless back and forth. They had crossed a line, and I wasn't about to be guilt-tripped into pretending otherwise. Today, I had bigger things to focus on. I forced myself out of bed, ignoring the way my limbs ached, and went about my morning routine. Coffee, shower, get dressed. Everything mechanical, everything controlled. By the time I stepped outside, the rain had stopped, but the air was thick with the promise of another storm. I didn't care. I had work to do. The first sign that something was wrong came an hour into my day. Sigrid, a voice called from behind me. I turned to see Mr. Thorne, my boss, standing at my desk with a look I couldn't quite read. Can you step into my office? A cold prickle ran down my spine, but I nodded, following him inside. He closed the door, then walked over to his computer, turning the screen toward me. Did you send this? I leaned forward, my breath hitching as I scanned the email. It was from my company account, but it wasn't from me. Fake Sigrid email. I don't have time for your nonsense. Find someone else to deal with this. My pulse pounded in my ears. I never sent this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Thorne studied me. It came from your account. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling as I scanned the email details. And then I saw it. The IP address. It wasn't from my work laptop. It wasn't even from my apartment. It was from an out-of-state location. Los Angeles. My breath hitched. Vesper. That bitch. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, as a slow, simmering rage replaced the shock. I swear to you, I did not send that email, I said, my voice steel now. Someone hacked into my account. Mr. Thorne studied me for a moment, then exhaled. It is already looking into it. I hope, for your sake, you're telling the truth. I am. I stood, my entire body trembling as I walked out of his office, barely registering the murmured conversations around me. By the time I stepped outside, the crisp air barely cooled the heat burning under my skin. I pulled out my phone and dialed. She picked up on the second ring. Well, that was fast, Vesper mused, her voice dripping with fake innocence. What the hell did you do? A short pause, then a soft, amused chuckle. You're going to have to be more specific, little sis. My jaw locked. You sent that email. You tried to sabotage my job. Another pause, then laughter. I didn't try, she corrected. I did. My grip on the phone tightened. What the hell is wrong with you? Oh, please, she scoffed. I was just giving you a little break. You were always working too much anyway. I felt something snap inside me. You're insane. And you're predictable, she said. You always think you're above us, don't you? Always the responsible one, always judging, always looking down at me like I'm some kind of screw-up. I said nothing, because the truth was, I had. I had spent years pretending that if I just helped enough, if I just covered enough bills, took care of enough problems, bailed them out of enough messes, they would eventually change. But they never did. I exhaled, my voice like ice. I should have cut you all off years ago. A long pause, then her voice softer now. Then do it. Click. She hung up. I stood there, staring at my reflection in the building's glass doors, my heart hammering in my chest. They weren't going to stop. They weren't going to change. They wanted a fight? Fine. Let's see how far they were willing to go. I stormed back into the office, my pulse pounding harder than the wind howling through the streets outside. Every step felt heavy, charged with the kind of anger I had swallowed down for years. But not anymore. This time, I wasn't going to let it go. By the time I reached Mr. Thorne's office, my hands had stopped shaking. I knocked once before stepping inside. He was sitting at his desk, his expression unreadable. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I did. He exhaled, rubbing his temple before looking up at me. "Sigrid, I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you send that email?" I forced myself to meet his gaze. "No, I didn't. Someone hacked my account." He studied me for a long moment. "And you have proof of that?" "I'm working on it." The silence stretched. Then, a voice from the doorway. "She didn't do it." I turned to see Ronan, one of my closest coworkers, standing there with his arms crossed. Mr. Thorne arched a brow. "You're vouching for her?" Ronan nodded. "Without a doubt. Sigrid wouldn't write something like that. It's not just unprofessional, it's sloppy, and she's not sloppy." I swallowed. Mr. Thorne let out a slow breath before leaning back in his chair. "If what you're saying is true, you need to find proof. Fast." I nodded, my hands balling into fists under the desk. "You wanted a war, Vesper?" I thought, my jaw tightening. "You've got one." The moment I stepped out of the office, I pulled out my phone and called her. She answered almost immediately, her voice casual. "Miss me already?" I saw red. "You're going to undo what you did." A beat of silence, then a soft chuckle. "Why would I do that? You deserve a little humility." My grip on the phone tightened. "You think this is about humility? You committed fraud." She scoffed. "Oh, please. No one will care. It's just a silly email." I exhaled sharply, forcing myself to stay calm. "You don't get it, do you? I will bury you for this." Her amusement faltered. "Ach, whatever. You can't do anything to me." I smiled, though there was nothing kind about it. "Watch me." An hour later, I had everything ready. Screenshots of the fraudulent email, proof of my IP address not matching the sender, and a formal complaint drafted to HR. But first, I gave Vesper one last chance. I called her again, this time without an ounce of hesitation. She picked up, her voice sharper. "What now?" I didn't waste time. "If you don't fix this, I'm pressing charges for fraud and identity theft." A beat of silence, then a laugh, this one forced. "You wouldn't dare." I leaned back in my chair, calm now. "Try me." I could hear her exhale through the line. Then, after a long pause, "Fine, whatever, I'll fix it." I didn't thank her. I simply hung up. And just like that, the power shifted. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I wasn't naive enough to think this was over. This was just the first battle. My inbox pinged. I clicked it open, my stomach twisting as I read the subject line. HR email. "We need to discuss the integrity of your work at the company. Please schedule a meeting as soon as possible." I clenched my jaw, locking my phone. The fight had just begun. I sat in the stiff chair across from HR, my hands gripping the armrests as I forced myself to breathe evenly. The walls of the conference room felt too small, the fluorescent lighting too harsh. Across from me, Rebecca Caldwell, the HR representative, folded her hands over a stack of printed emails. She was watching me like I was a ticking time bomb. "Sigrid," she started, her voice too careful, too measured. "There have been concerns about professionalism based on recent emails sent from your company account." I kept my expression neutral. "I didn't send those emails." Rebecca arched a brow. "That's a serious claim. Do you have proof?" I had expected that. I reached into my bag, pulling out the printed logs from IT. Right here. The emails weren't sent from my IP address or any of my devices. I'm the victim of an attack, fraud and identity theft. She took the papers, scanning them. I could see the moment doubt crept in. "Give us some time to review this," she finally said. "We'll be in touch." I left the meeting room with a weight still pressing on my chest. They hadn't outright accused me of lying, but the suspicion was there. And until they cleared my name, that stain would linger. I clenched my fists. They tried to ruin my career. Now they're about to regret it. The elevator ride to my apartment felt longer than usual. I was exhausted, drained from the constant battles. All I wanted was to lock my door, take a hot shower, and figure out my next move. But the moment I stepped into the hallway, I knew something was wrong. They were here. My mother, Lenora, stood at my door, her coat draped over her shoulders like she was some grieving widow. Calder, my father, was next to her, silent as always. And then there was Vesper, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, smirking like she had already won. My stomach turned. I gritted my teeth, forcing my voice to stay calm. "What are you doing here?" Lenora's lips pressed into a thin line. "We need to talk." "No," I said immediately. "You need to leave." Vesper rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, don't be so childish. You're making this worse than it has to be." My fingers curled into fists. "Making this worse. You sabotaged my job, stole my money, and now you're standing outside my home like I owe you an explanation?" Calder finally spoke, his voice as empty as ever. "We're still family, Sigrid. You can't just cut us off like this." Something in me snapped. "You don't get to tell me what I can and can't do," I shot back. "Not after everything you've done." Lenora sighed like I was exhausting her. "Listen, your sister needs help, and we need money to get back from Los Angeles." I barked out a laugh. "That sounds like a you problem." Her face hardened. "Don't be selfish. After everything we've done for you." My blood boiled. "You mean after everything I've done for you?" I snapped. "I paid your bills, covered your expenses, made sure you never had to lift a damn finger, and the second I stopped, you ran out of money." Lenora's jaw clenched. "We are your family," she hissed. "And I'm done being your ATM," I shot back. She took a step forward, and instinctively, I moved to block the doorway. "Move," she said. "Get out," I countered. Vesper let out a dramatic sigh. "Are you really going to call the cops on your own mother?" I met her gaze, cold and unwavering. "Yes." I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over the dial pad. Lenora's expression twisted, a flicker of uncertainty finally breaking through her righteous anger. "You wouldn't dare," she whispered. I met her gaze, steady. "Try me." Silence. Then Lenora's mask finally cracked. "Fine," she spat. "You're just like your father, weak and ungrateful." That was it. I hit dial. 911, what's your emergency? "My family is trespassing on my property and refusing to leave," I said, loud enough for them to hear. "I need officers at my apartment immediately." The effect was instant. Calder stepped back first. "Let's go," he muttered under his breath. Vesper glared at me, her jaw clenched. "Unbelievable! You'd do this to us?" "You did this to yourselves," I said, voice unwavering. They left, but I knew. This wasn't over. I exhaled, my hands still shaking as I locked the door behind me. Then my phone buzzed. "Vesper, you just made the biggest mistake of your life." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I deleted it. If this was war, I was going to win. I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating nonstop. The cold morning air seeped through the cracks in my apartment's windows, but that wasn't why I shivered. I had a feeling, a gut-wrenching, skin-crawling feeling, that something had happened. I reached for my phone, my fingers stiff from sleep, and the second I unlocked it, I knew. My name was everywhere. Family group chats, Facebook posts, Instagram stories. They had gone public. I sat up, my stomach twisting as I clicked the first notification. A Facebook post from Lenora, my mother. It breaks my heart to see how money can turn a daughter against her own family. "We raised her with love, and now she treats us like strangers." After everything we've sacrificed for her, she has abandoned us in our time of need. Please pray for her soul. I blinked. What? The hell? My eyes dropped to the comments. Random commenter. How could she do that to her own parents? Another commenter. Family always comes first. Disgusting behavior. Aunt Marjorie. Oh, Lenora, I had no idea you were suffering like this. Stay strong. I gripped the phone, my breath shallow. They just made this war public. And then, because my family didn't believe in stopping at one stab in the back, I got the second blow. Vesper's Instagram story. I clicked it, my heart beat like a war drum. Not many people know this, but Sigrid has a history of being selfish. She even stole money from our parents before. This isn't new. We've always had to take care of her, even when she refused to take care of us. I felt something inside me snap. They weren't just playing the victim, they were rewriting history. I had spent years sacrificing for them, years covering their expenses, their bad choices, their entire lives while they drained me dry. And now I was the villain? No. I threw my blankets off and stood up, my legs shaking. My reflection in the window looked foreign. Eyes dark with exhaustion, hair a tangled mess, jaw clenched so tightly it ached. I inhaled once, slowly. Then I fought back. I opened Facebook and started typing. My fingers flew over the keyboard, the words spilling out like wildfire. Sigrid's post. I never wanted to bring family drama online, but since my mother and sister decided to attack my reputation publicly, here are the facts. 1. My family stole money from me to fund their luxury trip to Los Angeles while I was sick in bed. 2. My mother has never worked a day in her life, and my father stood by while they manipulated me into paying their bills for years. 3. My sister Vesper lost her job over a year ago and has been refusing to work, instead relying on others to support her lifestyle. 4. I have never stolen a dime from them, but they have taken thousands from me. I attached screenshots, bank transactions, their fraudulent credit card charges, the fake email Vesper sent to my boss. Then I posted it. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. Let's see how they handled the truth. It took exactly 5 minutes before the first wave hit. My notifications exploded. Comments flooding in. Cousin Mary. Wait, what? They stole from you? Uncle David. Hold on, this changes everything. This isn't what Lenora said at all. Random commenter. OMG, the receipts. This is insane. I exhaled sharply, the tension in my shoulders starting to loosen. And then, a text from my cousin Elowen. Elowen. I'm with you. Let's expose them. I stared at the message, my heartbeat steady now. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone in this fight. But I knew one thing. This wasn't over. I woke up to hundreds of new notifications. The storm outside mirrored the chaos brewing in my inbox. Wind howling, rain slamming against the windows. I sat up slowly, grabbing my phone, already bracing myself for the backlash. It wasn't just backlash, it was a war zone. My post had exploded overnight. Support flooded in. Commenter 1. Your mother sounds exactly like mine. Stay strong. Commenter 2. Wow, the audacity of your family is insane. Commenter 3. They used you for years and expected you to stay quiet? Not anymore. I exhaled sharply, scrolling through the sea of messages. And then, right on cue, the guilt-tripping began. Aunt Martha. You didn't have to humiliate them like this, Sigrid. Family is family. I scoffed, my fingers tightening around the phone. Then where were you when they were humiliating me? I was about to type that exact response when my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A rough inhale. Then, your mother. She collapsed. My blood turned to ice. Calder. My father. The man who had stood in the background my entire life, watching my mother and sister drain me dry. What? I breathed. His voice was cautious, hesitant. She's in the hospital. The stress of all this, it was too much for her. I felt my stomach churn. This was too convenient. A woman who had spent her entire life manipulating every situation, controlling every conversation, suddenly too fragile to handle the consequences? I gritted my teeth. Which hospital? I walked into the ER with my arms crossed, my heartbeat steady. I wasn't here out of guilt. I was here to confirm the truth. Lenora was lying in a hospital bed, looking pathetic. Her hair was carefully disheveled, an IV taped to her wrist, the picture of frailty. Vesper was sitting beside her, glaring daggers at me. Lenora's eyes fluttered open, as if she had just enough strength to acknowledge me. Sigrid. Her voice was weak, raspy. You did this to me. My jaw clenched. There it was. The final, desperate attempt to pull me back into their control. Vesper smirked, arms crossed. Happy now? I didn't say a word. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked straight to the nurse's station. A woman in scrubs barely glanced up from her clipboard. What happened? I asked, my voice perfectly even. She scanned the file. Mild dehydration. No cardiac issues. She's being discharged soon. I let out a slow, steady breath. Of course! I turned back to the room, my mind clear for the first time in years. They were trying to pull me back one last time. Lenora's weak act was still in full force when I stepped back inside. I walked right up to her bedside, looking down at the woman who had spent her entire life controlling me. I see you're fine, I said flatly. That's good, but I'm done. Her eyes flashed. You can't just… I already did. I turned to leave, but before I could take 2 steps, Vesper lunged. Her fingers wrapped around my arm in a bruising grip. You think you can just cut us off? She hissed, her nails digging into my skin. I met her gaze, calm and unshaken. Watch me. I yanked my arm free and walked out without looking back. The cold air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside, filling my lungs with something that almost felt like freedom. My phone buzzed. Email notification. I glanced at the sender. Mr. Thorne. Subject. Your job. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then, for the first time in a long while, I felt hope. 3 months. It had been 3 months since I had last seen them, last heard their voices, last let their words worm their way under my skin. And in those 3 months, my life had transformed in ways I never thought possible. I wasn't living in reaction anymore. I was living in control. I had cut off every single financial tie to my family. No more money funneled into their endless cycle of irresponsibility. No more late-night guilt-tripping phone calls about bills they never intended to pay themselves. I had won my battle at work. After the dust settled from Vesper's sabotage, the truth came out. Mr. Thorne had reviewed the security logs and confirmed that the fraudulent email had originated from an IP in Los Angeles, not my devices. Vesper's pathetic attempt to ruin me had backfired spectacularly. And in the most ironic twist of all, I had been promoted. I was now overseeing a major campaign, making more money than ever, and, most importantly, finally enjoying my job again. Therapy helped, more than I expected. For the first time, I was learning what my life looked like when it wasn't shaped around the chaos of others. I went to art galleries. I tried new restaurants. I spent lazy Sundays with friends instead of anxiously waiting for the next crisis call from my mother. I traveled. I breathed. And for the first time in years, my mind wasn't weighed down by their voices. I never knew how much space they took up in my head until they were gone. The suitcase sat neatly by the door, packed with everything I needed for my long overdue trip. Rome, the city I had once planned to see with my parents. The trip I had meticulously arranged, only for them to steal it from me. But this time, I was going alone. I glanced at the clock. My flight was in 5 hours, just enough time for one last email check before I left. I opened my inbox, scrolled, deleted spam, approved a final work memo, and then, one new message. The sender made my stomach clench. Calder, father. The subject line was simple. I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time before clicking. Sigrid, I know you don't owe us anything. I just wanted you to know that I see what we did. I see it now. And I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that. Take care, Dad. I read it twice. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anger, just quiet understanding. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was still playing a role. Or maybe, for the first time in his life, he was telling the truth. Either way, it wasn't my burden to carry anymore. I hovered over the reply button. Then, I deleted the email. No response, no closure, just silence. The airport was buzzing with energy, the kind of restless excitement that only travel could bring. I moved through the terminal with ease, my steps light, my mind clear. At the gate, a flight attendant greeted me with a warm smile. "Welcome aboard. Business or pleasure?" I smiled back, adjusting the strap of my bag. Pleasure, definitely pleasure. As I settled into my seat, I pulled out my phone one last time. A new message, not from my family, from a friend, a real friend. I chuckled, shaking my head as I typed out a quick reply. Then, I locked my phone, leaned back, and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for years. I was free. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was me. And my life. It was finally mine. Before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to reflect on everything we've just been through together. Life has a way of teaching us the hardest lessons through the people we love the most. Sometimes those lessons come wrapped in betrayal, manipulation, and heartbreak. But here's the truth. Your worth is not determined by what you can give to others. You are not obligated to sacrifice your peace, your happiness, or your success to maintain toxic relationships. Cutting off family is never easy. Society tells us that family is everything, but what if your family is the very thing holding you back? What if they take and take until there's nothing left of you? You don't owe them your destruction. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. I learned that the hard way. But here's what I want you to take from this. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to choose yourself. The people who truly love you won't demand your suffering as proof of your loyalty. So, now I ask you, have you ever had to walk away from someone you once thought would always be there for you? Have you ever had to rebuild yourself after realizing the people closest to you never truly had your best interests at heart? If this story resonated with you, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever been through something similar, I'd love to hear your story, because trust me, you're not alone. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. There are so many more powerful stories to tell, and I can't wait to share them with you. Until next time, take care of yourself first.